Good evening. You're watching the Cheese Room podcast with me, the caller, live from the man cave. I've got a full tank of beer, which means it's the end of the week. My diet is done and I can eat what I want, which is just as well because I'm going to a toddler's birthday party on Sunday and I'm going to fill my face with cake. Welcome to everyone who's tuned in. Please do smash the like button, subscribe while you're here as well. And if you haven't done already, consider being a channel member. Lots of great perks. I can see we've got one in the chat already. Kerry, hello, good evening. Welcome to you. We have got an action-packed lined up tonight. So action-packed you wouldn't believe. And I've got three wonderful guests with me here to talk you through it. All the wonderful Tottenham Hotspur news and views are right here, and you can play your part too. Send us a super chat, send us a chat. We'll get through them during the show, and it's really good to have some positive news to talk about with Spurs. Dave, which podcasts have been sending you to sleep this week? Nice being.
Thanks very much. I'm live in Melbourne at the moment. You know, I've got my beanie on. It's the most exciting day of the year. It's the shortest day of the year the other day. So for Melbourneites, that was just the longest day in the words of their excitement. So I was listening to the Fighting Cock or something the other night.
Yeah.
With the voices of the Tottenham out movement. All respect and sincerely to Mr. Daigle. As for the other one, yeah, not really. And I fell asleep to it anyway, so I woke up and here I am.
I mean, I would say that would be you slagging off the Fighting Cock, but don't you fall to sleep listening to the Cheese Room podcast as well? In fact, any podcast, no?
No.
It's the age thing, isn't it?
I just fall asleep anyway on the couch and wake up with my kebab on my chin.
You get to 50, it's like nap time all the time.
Correct.
We know. Good to have you on the show, and good to see you as the honorary fake Aussie this week, repping the beanie. It is clearly a good look, and I'm just happy it's cold there. I've got to have the door open in here tonight. It's so warm. Speaking of warm, HG, I hear the weather is a bit toasty where you are.
Yeah, it's been pretty hot this week, disgustingly so, but in true tradition, we have the largest free music festival in Vienna this weekend, and it absolutely dumped just as it was about to start. So actually, if I put the windows open, you probably hear the music because it's not that far from here at all.
Okay.
But it's like Glastonbury without any of the glam. I couldn't tell you who was playing.
All good bands.
No, I can. Bonnie Tyler is on tomorrow night, the free music festival in Vienna. Can't miss it.
It sounds a bit like the Godiva Festival in Coventry, which has, I think was headlined by Busted one year. Winning at last.
Hang on a minute. Hang on a sec. The Godiva Festival, is that named after Lady Godiva, as in the woman who went down the
rode
street
through the city naked on a horse? Yeah.
Right. Okay.
No, not Steve Diver. Let's be clear. That's an image you don't want. Steve riding naked on a horse through Coventry.
Stop.
And HT,
I really don't want to think about Coventry, no matter how many times you say it. Can you please no?
There's not much good in Coventry. Apologies if anyone watching is from Coventry, but I work there, so.
And HG, are you preparing to have your heart eclipsed by Bonnie Tyler at the festival?
Do you know what? I was trying to remember what her two songs were, and I knew that was one. But I couldn't remember the other, and I started singing, and is this her? I can't believe it. I think she only had one, but it was. I don't remember the name of it now, but she has. I think she's on for an hour tomorrow night. It'll be a lot of her talking in those two songs, most likely. But
it's. I know the other song. Maybe someone in the chat will want to put in what the other famous Bonnie Tyler song is.
This is a fair point because HG's had threats of violence this week, and the melt making these threats of violence doesn't realise he lives in. I'll see you in London, you. Yeah.
It's been pretty funny, and I've been laughing.
As I put it quite succinctly, he clearly doesn't realise HG's about 7 foot tall, wide as a Panzer tank, and lives in Vienna. Speaking of Panzer tanks. But anyway, moving on swiftly from World War II anecdotes. It's Jack, Flat Cap Jack, all the way from Brooklyn. How are you?
Not feeling as wide as a Panzer tank or a Sherman tank, but, I'll try. Maybe I'll, do a job. Yeah, doing all right. I guess it's been actually a bit of a busy week in a way, and I kind of was expecting Daniel Levy or the club to drop some sort of kind of big news on a Friday night, because they do like to drop them at the kind of weirdest of times so we can sort of drop everything. But yeah, looks like we might go into a pretty casual weekend. And Guglielmo, I'm trying my best here, Vicario is due to have a medical with a medical team that maybe we could actually loan out to a different club.
There we go. He's had the here you go from Fabrizio Romano. Vicario will travel to London this weekend to have medical tests, which is nice. Full agreement in place. It's been given the here you go. It's a 5-year deal. People better educated on European football than me. That's why you're here, Jack and HG. Tell me all about this. I'm not asking you. No, I didn't include you in that, Dave, by the way. Please do tell me about Mr. Vicario. What do we know? Who wants to go first? Let's go to Jack first.
I actually sort of didn't know much about him until we basically had the rumors that we had signed him. I feel like I've marinated, chicken in less time or more time than actually this whole thing was done. It feels like it was done in like 12 hours, this whole deal. And it kind of was like as if I was told sort of that we had a pop quiz or like, a final exam, the following day. And I had no idea that it was about to happen. So I actually sort of crammed in as much research and as much kind of studying as I could on a Guglielmo Vicario sort of test, if you will. And from what I could gather, it seems like maybe Spurs have gone for more of the analytical kind of approach, kind of more of the Brighton Brentford kind of approach where they might be able to save a bit of money, but they're sort of going after relatively a very similar player. And I guess sort of the fan base is very upset after we've wanted to start behaving like Brentford and Brighton. And now that we maybe are, I guess we're, getting a cold feet about it.
Yeah, but Jack, we're Spurs. We're not Brighton or Brentford. We're Spurs. We're a big club. We need to... whatever.
How dare we take a page out of anybody's book? I do feel like...
I think Brighton have won stuff more recently than Spurs. Promotion to the Premier League. Yeah.
On Vicario, though, specifically, I feel like it seems like he's highly rated in the Serie A by the looks of things. Anybody that watches the Serie A regularly seems to rate him quite highly. In fact, even other clubs in the Serie A rate him quite highly because Andre Onana, I believe, could be out the door this summer if he were to leave. And Vicario has been lined up, I guess, as one of the replacements for Inter Milan. And he also, I guess, is an Inter Milan fan. So I was able to find out. And I think even Juventus were looking at maybe replacing him with or replacing Szczesny with him as well. So he seems to be highly rated in Serie A. It's just like he's not really been on the map or really been around for all that long. I think he was only in Empoli last season and they got promoted the season before that. And I think, yeah, right. So he's really only been playing in the Serie A, if I'm not mistaken, for like the last 2 or 3 seasons, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, he's not really a household name, but he could become a household name. And he is quite highly rated. And a lot of big clubs were looking after him. So they usually know what they're doing. So maybe we can follow suit.
Yeah, I saw that. HG, European football expert, tell me you know something.
I found it.
I know where Europe is. Look, this is not just to play on his name either. But I was trying to think of what the English equivalent would be, and it'd probably be someone like Nick Pope, the Pope and Vicar doing it together. But like, just no one knows where Nick Pope really came from. Do you know what I mean? Like, suddenly he was playing for Burnley, but it wasn't really. He hadn't come up through a big team. No one knew a great deal about him, and suddenly he was playing Premier League and doing okay for a smaller club. I think Empoli, to be fair to them, are not like Burnley. They're a bit more like really
lower
like
mid-table.
A bit more like Brentford in the fact that they like to have young players develop there. That's kind of what they're known for. And so for a goalkeeper, as Jack said, he's only been there a couple of seasons. And they plucked him from being the reserve, I think, at Cagliari. And so I don't know a great deal about him, but I feel like with Spurs right now, it's not a difficult move, not a bad move to look at the Italy squad or to look at the Italy under-21 squad and see, are there names that we don't know too much about? I'm already thinking there's going to be some Italian version of James Maddison that we don't know much about, who may well join if Maddison doesn't come for whatever reason. So, like Vicario, 6'4", I'm happy about that. I granted, if a goalkeeper's bigger than me, that's a good sign. And I'm excited. None of us really know anything about him. I read an article this morning that was written back in January when it looked like he was going to go to Bayern to replace Manuel Neuer. And they kind of described him as being like the Manuel Neuer's twin. as in their stats were very similar. They played the game very similarly, which again, I didn't read this in January. I didn't know about him in January, but I read it this morning. In the end, I think they went for Jan Sommer because it was cheaper, and they weren't necessarily looking for a long-term solution.
Yeah.
But still, when you see that he's been linked with these clubs, and you think, okay, that should mean something. So yeah, I'm excited. I really, I can't remember the last time we signed someone that I knew nothing or very little about. Because usually I do know a little bit about. Kulusevski, as you know, Caller, I was banging his drum for about a year before we signed him. So it's interesting. I'm excited that the ball is rolling, so to speak.
I think it's slightly frustrating that all the footage of him is sort of like the same as well. It's like all the same saves that I feel like I've seen 1,000
There's only
times
really
now.
one season, There's only
Yeah,
really
and
two
right, and
seasons
none of it's of the
and-
distribution, which we kind of also want to see. We want it, like the stats show that he could be very good at distribution. I think from some people's kind of, I guess analysis of him, they're kind of saying that he's not all that bad and he's actually improving on it every season. But it's kind of a little frustrating with these type of players when there isn't, like I said, they're not household names. So therefore there isn't all that sort of footage of them or really that many people even talking about them. But I guess he's sort of just been catching a lot of wind quite quickly and has had a terrific season. They went from like scoring or conceding like 70 goals, I think, in his first season in the Serie A with Empoli. And then the following season, they conceded 40 or 39 or something like that in total. So obviously that maybe had to do with a switch of manager to more defensive, almost, Serie A type manager, but also as well, I think it could have been that he maybe had a pretty terrific season for them. He looks more to be like a David De Gea in the fact that he's very kind of like athletic, sort of like cat-like reflexes, kind of like sort of Hugo has, and he really likes to save with his feet by the looks of things too, which is I actually like. I think that definitely is a great way to sort of make your saving repertoire even kind of more impressive. But what I am a little concerned about is, at least from what I could tell from some of the saves he made, I feel like some of the parries were a little bit sketchy, or some of them were a little bit kind of like knocking them back into the danger area.
I think that's what I read from. I mean, I don't know much about him, but from what I've read, the Athletic article was basically, if he's got weakness, he comes for too many crosses almost, which is refreshing because let's face it, Hugo is rooted to his line. Like, he doesn't move off his line and never comes for a cross. So that'll be interesting. He takes risks with his feet a little bit. So he's confident, but maybe overconfident possession. Nothing like Hugo whatsoever, to be honest. And, the other thing that stands out to me is his penalty saving ratio is really high. It's like 63% of all penalties faced, he's saved.
Which would be handy for Romero.
Which would be very handy for Romero. But my question is, Jack, you mentioned, being full of wind. And speaking of which, I've got to go over to Sydney because here's a man who's normally full of wind about something. And I've got a question for him that's going to wind him up. Did we go for the cheap option, and should we have dropped 40 million on Raya? Dave Enoch out. Well,
that's a really good question, but unfortunately, I've been invited by the Fighting Cock to talk about Enoch out, so I'm not allowed. I'm under an exclusive contract, so from now on, no. Here's what we know now as we sit here at this time of days, all around the world that we are. We're in 3 continents. On the one hand, we know of one goalkeeper who's played in the Premier League for about, 2 seasons now, who has got very good stats, who was impressive, and is someone who's got 1 year left on his contract, and we know is acclimatised to English life, the English game, and I believe counts as an English homegrown player, who the price has been set at 40 million quid. And on the other hand, we have a goalkeeper who's played for Empoli for 1 or 2 seasons for 18 million quid. And I don't know if we don't know if he's going to settle into London life. We don't know if he's going to acclimatise to the Premier League. And there's a 22 million pound difference in relation to that. Now, in that regard,
in your spare room, Dave?
Louis Armstrong's just woken up. He's just tuning up. He's not really happy when I talk about him that way. Basically, that's what we know. We've got the 18 million quid, unknown quantity in the Premier League, unknown whether we can adapt to the English Premier League, unknown if he can settle London life, versus the 40 million quid, the established go-to option. And this is the communal trend that we've seen over the years. So people are saying that, well, we can't, 40 million quid is a ridiculous price and this, that, and the other. So it may well be that what he's going to do is wait until Raya finishes his contract next season, and he's got our man in Italy will be the second choice, and Forster will go on his way. That may be the grand plan of Daniel, and let's see if that happens. He might be there for the opening of the hotel. Let's see.
Or the Formula One racing track. You never know, Dave.
Yes.
Apparently. But, look, it's a signing, isn't it? It takes our summer spending so far to 85 million, doesn't it, HG?
It depends how you want to frame that one. I've seen people say that because they're including the money for Porro and they're including the money now for Kulusevski that suddenly is part of this season's pot. I don't, certainly the Porro one I don't really count. But yeah, if you want to say that those three signings are all in this summer, then we've spent over 80 million. Absolutely.
I suppose the way I look at it is if they're in the financial year, isn't it? It's how much you've spent in a financial year rather than.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about, like, if you've got a transfer chest for the summer window, why am I counting January? I'm not.
Well,
right?
I don't think that's the way it works. I think you've got a transfer.
No. It works the way it works. The way I work it is the way I choose for it to work. Like, I understand that the club may think, hey, we've got our yearly budget from July 1st to June 30. But as a fan, I think about window upon window. I'm not worried about what we might do. Like, do I count Udoji for this window because he's finally going to show up at Spurs?
Well, no, because he's already been bought.
Yeah, but he's not been at Spurs.
Yeah, but he's been bought.
So he's another new signing. It all depends on how you want to play it. I don't believe that. To me, I can see an argument for the money that we've paid for Kulusevski coming into play now. But I would think, and I think we all thought, that a year ago that was going to happen anyway. So when have you budgeted for that to happen? But no, like we still need, I think, quite a few more signings, to be honest.
I mean, it could be a £200 million window, couldn't it?
I just count the installments.
Yeah, see, if
do you,
Jack? If we all knew when the installments were,
but I think that's, if you really wanted to, like, probably be anywhere close to even accurate, which I don't think anybody could be, but I think you would probably just, majority of the things we paid for have been in installments. I think there's very few.
Well, the majority of things everyone pays for installments. There's,
yeah, but I think with Spurs, I feel like we get that report more than other clubs do. When Chelsea buys somebody for 80 million, you never hear like, it's being paid in installments. When Spurs buys somebody for like 45 million, you hear like it's paid over 7 years, and all these type of things. So I don't know. I feel like maybe if you really did want to like get down to the numbers, you might as well just count up all the installments in an Excel sheet.
Yeah,
or you could just read the annual report at the end of the year, which we do in the cheese room,
But we read that for the number of how much money the club owes on transfers, right? And it might have a line about how much the club is owed from other people on transfers, which probably is next to nothing, unless, was it Ajax for Bergwijn's pretty much the only sale we've made. But I just, to me, like we can look at last summer and we can say we bought Richarlison and we bought a couple of others and we spent about 130 million, or we committed about 130 million.
That's the correct term, yeah.
And I don't really care when that money goes out. I understand that it's going to be done at, whatever, 10 million a year for Richarlison or whatever we've decided. But as far as I'm concerned, I know that we can't spend more than we won't spend more than we have, right? We understand that, and we know that since the stadium has opened, that Spurs have spent a lot of money on players. I don't really care if we still owe money on Reguilon. That's irrelevant to me. The idea is we're a club that has tried to live within its means for the last 15 years now, and so yeah, like what will those means be? I think that's the question, and none of us will know it, but we can go on previous summers and think, hey, the stadium's been full for a season. We spent 130 net spend last year, or we committed that much last year. We could probably commit that much again. That's just how I see it.
I mean, we got form for this. I mean, I do remember when Adebayor was on loan for the first season, and then he signed permanently for us. We unveiled him as a new signing for the start of the home game. And I do remember.
Yeah. I think
it actually gives you the opportunity to do it twice, because it's like a 2-for-1 deal where you bring him in as the new signing and then you sign him again and then you get to do it all over again. I think it's kind of It's quite clever, actually.
It's quite.
I mean, it fools me every time. I think we're so active in the transfer market by the way that we just, each installment to me is a transfer. It's a new player. It's like we should have on their back of their shirts. We should do the merch installment number 1, and then installment number 2, and then installment number 3.
Well, the classic for me was, do you remember the period we didn't sign anyone, but there were several contract extensions, and every time there was a contract extension, it's like a new signing. It's like having a new signing. So that's Spurs. But, we've not been shy with the purse strings over the last 24 months, and I'm sure we won't be this time. But the question, I suppose, is, I'm going to stick with you on this, HG. Do you think we should have gone? Do you think we should have monkeyed at 40 million for Raya, or gone for a relatively unknown? No.
No. Raya may well have been worth that to Brentford, but Brentford aren't stupid. They tried to get more than probably they would have accepted. That's how you would do a negotiation. But I don't think Raya was worth 40 million. With Spurs having somewhat limited funds, and we know that we need centre-backs, and we know that we probably want a creative midfielder, a goalkeeper, it doesn't. It seems a risk worth taking right now that we're going to get some guy who may well become very good, and we just don't know.
What about the Seville goalkeeper?
Bunu.
No, what's his name?
Bunu.
Oh, it's Bono. You just ruined the joke. Forget it.
Oh, Dave, you need to go for a walk where the streets have no name.
If he misses a cross, it'd be a question that he still hasn't found what he's looking for. But no, if Bruno it is, then move on.
I just want you to hold me, kiss me, kill me, thrill me. But moving on, big news. Steinson is understood to be set to leave Spurs as the club continue to pull apart the structure built by Fabio Paratici. This is a little bit odd to me, if I'm honest, Jack, because he's just got there, hasn't he? And Paratici, I mean, we'll get onto him in Sacred Cow. Don't worry, Paratici. You'll have yours in a minute. But it's a bit odd because he was Levy's trusted lieutenant, we understand. I think Daniel listened to him a lot. Certainly all the transfers had his fingerprints all over it, and maybe still do. But why would you destroy that structure overnight? Just because of one season of failure, I suppose, if you like. It seems a bit of a strange thing to do, unless your modus operandi is to give Ange a shitload of control over transfers.
Maybe, but it is especially odd because he seemed to be very well liked by a lot of the very talented academy members that we have right now. I know even Jamie Donnelly's dad was actually quite upset, just from what I could tell, for this sacking. He said he was also pretty much part of the guy that pushed the Mikey Moore contract, and we know that Mikey Moore was being linked with Dortmund, Chelsea, Bayern. I think he was linked with a host of clubs to take him away from us, and Greta Steinson supposedly was one of the main guys and kind of getting him to sign up with us. And supposedly he's been behind some of the other kind of major sort of academy contract extensions. And I don't want to go on too much of a rant here, but I do think what Paratici and maybe Steinson in particular,
because it enables me to go and get beer. So
I like your rants as well. Come on, crack on.
Carry on. Yeah.
Suppose what I've done a tiny bit of research on this, but the other Dave Harris, not the one on this panel, but the one that we have stationed in Europe, he did a bit of research on this, and supposedly there was a bit of a divide between Paratici and John McDermott over kind of what the academy can spend. And I guess John McDermott, who had been there a long time, I think during the days of Pochettino and whatnot, sort of believed in not giving these players kind of, financial incentives and, contract incentives and things like that. And also spending money on players from other academies to bring into our academy to sort of make it even more talented. He sort of believed in kind of that hard work, old school ethic, which I think absolutely should also be there. But supposedly Greta Steinson was kind of brought in to kind of keep some of our more talented academy prospects at Spurs. And I think he did it quite successfully by the looks of things. And I would have been really sad to have seen the likes of a Mikey Moore leave, to have seen an Alfie Dorrington leave, to have seen a Jamie Donnelly leave, and more and more and more. We have a bit of a golden generation coming through at that academy. And if it meant that we needed to spend a bit more on them, in order to keep their future aligned. And also as well, at this moment in time, there's not much of a pathway that we can really point to. So it probably did require sort of some type of, negotiation that maybe was a bit different than what we used to do in order to kind of keep some of our more talented people, because we've lost Edwards, we've lost Madueke, we've lost just recently Mundell. So I think maybe Spurs have done the right thing in trying to secure a lot of new academy guys. And from what I've heard, I could be wrong, but Steinson, I think, played a really heavy part in at least a lot of them. And it's sad to see him go. And I'm curious as to why.
So what you're saying, Jack, is 3 days after Mikey Moore signs a new deal, Levy said, "You've spent money, off, get out of here, go somewhere else. We don't want your type."
It really could have been it could have been the case that maybe despite some of the good things that I just mentioned, Steinson and Parrott did with the academy, with spending more on it, it could also be the case that Postecoglou maybe might not like that sort of system, or Daniel Levy wasn't a big fan of it in the first place, maybe not just for money spending, but maybe for other reasons. And maybe they're securing the guys. They're securing the guys they want for the future. They want now. And then after they've secured the contracts of the academy prospects they want, they can rip up the Paratici philosophy and go to a different one. And maybe that's what
he might just be seen as Paratici's man. And whoever's come in, if to me, if Scott Munn is the one making these decisions, which I suspect he would be, then it might just be, well, we don't really think that we need what was he, performance director? I mean, none of us really knew what he did. It's only now that he's been sacked that people have come out and said kind of the things that he was doing. Most of us didn't know. Certainly his track record at, was it Fleetwood before this, and then Everton, wasn't amazing. So yeah, it's a weird one because none of us saw it coming, right? I mean,
I heard he was at Fleetwood and then he was told to go his own way, so he had to leave. Anyway, sorry about that.
Well, I think we stalled long enough, honestly. Caller, that was probably a good 2 minutes there. That we were nearly stalling.
I mean, I thought it could have gone on for a little bit longer. I've just
that's called his second pint that he poured. The first one is already downed.
He's already put the cat out and the milk bottles out.
Oh shit! They're spilling everywhere. I've got it. Oh no, I've lost the YouTube.
I'm also though, maybe just to clarify, more speaking from what I've heard from a few other people. This isn't really all my own research. It's just what I'm regurgitating a lot of what I've heard about some of what the changes that Steinson, Simon Davies, Paratici made. And maybe HG said, it could just be the case that Scott Munn just wants to, get rid of clean shop of the old, Paratici stuff, and then just even if he makes the exact same thing, he wants it to be his own maybe thing.
Yeah, but Simon Davies has now been appointed the head of the academy, and I'm pretty sure he was at Tottenham last season, and he was with company Anderlecht, and I think he signed in with the City Group, which is where Munn is from. Then you've still got Gabardini there, who was appointed by
and he's connected to Paratici. I think they said the Vicario deal was done through Gabardini. And then Gabardini speaks to Paratici a lot.
Yeah, and then you got the bloke who went on Colombian television on his secret scouting mission and announcing that they're looking for a goalkeeper. So he left pretty soon after that. So maybe the Steinson's job was to persuade Mickey Moore to sign a new deal, and then once he'd done that, old Machiavellian Levy sent him on his way. You got to hand it to him. And I think John McDermott left. He went off to the FA, didn't he?
Do you have to hand it to him, DaveO? Because I sense that you don't really mean that.
He's Machiavellian. We're all pawns in his great big game of property chess. That's all
last thing on Steinson was supposedly this is what Jamie Donnelly's dad had said, that he was very good, Steinson, at actually speaking to a lot of the family members and speaking to the parents, and was very involved in the academy that way and being a bit more sort of personable. So that's also maybe a sad thing to see go. Somebody who wasn't just a business suit type of guy, in the
Jack. But you could do that, couldn't you, Jack? Talk to some family members.
These are basic things, but sometimes we overpraise some basic things for sure.
You'd be good I reckon you'd be good at that, Jack. I think you should get a job at the club at talking to family members. I reckon you'll do a good job. What do you reckon?
He's not bold enough.
Liaison.
He's not bold enough.
I think if anything, Craig should be that man because he's, the HR guru. He'd love a bit of that. The reason I was so long was because, as you can tell, I like a little munch while I'm off on the cheese room. It's my only chance to drink beer in the week. I've got some Black Country pork scratchings here. They don't sound very good when I'm mic'd up. So, if you see me go on mute, I'm probably crunching scratchings. I may need to visit the dentist tomorrow. Lindy's hit the nail on the head. Lindy, channel member. 100 watching. Where are your likes? I don't know how many likes there are, Lindy. Do let us know. Mother HG, be careful, caller. Absolutely. I do need to be careful because I've got a lot of fillings, and I'll be honest, they're not the best snack for that. And if you find a hairy pork scratching, for me, it's all over. You do not want the hairy ones. It puts you off the rest of the bag.
And they accuse me of going off on tangents. Anyway.
Well, I've got a license to tangent. It's fine. Now we're going to... we're going to move on from Wisconsin. I'm going to talk snog, marry, avoid, or keep, sell, or loan, as it is known in the cheese room run sheet. This
will be a difficult page, won't it?
I mean, this is the first four. I don't really understand. Someone needs to say something controversial here. Maybe in the chat you could tell us that you fancy.
I'm happy to do something.
Dave will always do.
If you're polyamorous, I think you would just say all four. But I guess if you're
all right, let's be honest. Dejan Kulusevski, he's not going anywhere because he's just literally he's a new signing. So there's no story there.
The question, hang on. Whoa. I was on the defence show early this week, and I'm glad to inform my fellow panelists who may not have watched. We're left with one defender. Everyone else is going. And therefore, the question for us all this week. Jack was on. I think Jack did the midfield during the week.
Jack, by the way, just let us know in the chat if this is true. Do you think pork scratchings are a terrible snack? Yes or no? Carry on, Dave. Sorry.
Would you buy, sell, or loan pork scratchings? Is the next question. So what I'm saying to you is the question for the panel all week is: would you, as a panel member, keep, sell, loan, marry, shag one of the players, right? So Dejan Kulusevski, I wouldn't have taken up the option or the instalment. I'd have sent him back. Everyone goes on about how we was shackled under the tyranny of Conte last season. But look at Son's miraculous recovery and his freedom once the Stellini-Mason coaching duo were in there. And we didn't see that from old Dejan. Dejan also had the World Cup off. He didn't play in that as well. He has not a very good injury record for someone so young. I'm a bit worried that he's been found out that his trick is to turn inside of a man and do what he does. His only good games last season was against Southampton. He's got nothing down their left-hand side, and they're not around unless we get him in the League Cup this season. So I would have sent him back.
Just because of how much he costs, right, Dave?
Hang on, is he in the 20 to 30 million bracket?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, he's in
damn
that
right.
bracket. Yeah. There you go.
I listen, the first season, he had a really good half season. I'm not getting away from that. I mean, obviously, when he first played, I thought, who's this? He's well slow. But he reminded me of a languid
30 to
Waddle.
40 million, to be fair.
Yeah, he reminded me of a languid Waddle in this first half season. The second season, he reminded me of Jason Giselle. He wasn't very good. Come on, HG, come on.
Well, I think that's all lunacy, but
But you're talking to Dave, so it makes perfect sense.
No, like Kulusevski was in and out of the side. It felt like for a lot of them. He got dropped for Richarlison, which was stupid to begin with at the start of the season. He started the season well, and then it was like, no, I want to play. I don't. Who knows what Conte was thinking? For most of last season, none of us really know what he was thinking. So I just think Kulusevski was still only 23. We'd need to buy another one. I just think with someone who's around, like it was a low risk move and a pretty good one. I mean, I watched him play here in Vienna during the week, Kulusevski, and he played up top in a 2 alongside Isaac and was one of the better players Sweden had. So the quality is definitely there. It's just about getting it out of him more regularly, and maybe we'll see that in a side that likes to play with the football, because certainly last season we didn't.
Okay. And Jack's got AWOL, so he can't answer. I mean, look, Kulusevski, there's no argument for me. He's quality, and I think he'll get. It might be interesting. I think it'd be very interesting to see where Ange plays him, because I think he could play a central role. Ange generally plays with 2 8s. I think he'd be one of those. So we shall see. But I wouldn't. I think he's 21, 22 years old, isn't he?
23, yeah.
23. I mean, still very young and going to be incredibly exciting for Spurs in the future.
And he's got, and for someone so young, his injury record isn't very good.
But he got injured. What, playing for Sweden?
Yeah.
What else? I mean, that was a pretty serious injury. But what else?
I think his injury record wasn't that good for Juve.
So
I think
you don't know.
being the
is the
operative.
scoreline.
Yeah. Let's move on.
Let me just ring someone in Italy.
Let's move on because I'm conscious we want to leave plenty of time for our sacred cows. There's a cow going to get slaughtered on this show tonight, at least one, maybe two. You need to stay tuned. Vegetarians beware. Sorry, Kerry. Heung-Min Son. Okay, so Heung-Min Son has been the subject of a bid by the Saudis. He said he doesn't want to go anywhere. But DaveO, if that money came in, what was it, 50 million plus?
60 million, I believe.
60 million plus. Would you take it?
Well, look, Daniel's very good at extracting value from the transfer market over a number of years. So I think that, we've got to fund the Maddison purchase because we've got to live within our means.
And the hotel.
And the hotel and the go-kart track. So basically, I'm saying we need to sell Son to fund the purchase of Maddison because we need to live within our means. And therefore, despite the fact we're one of the 10 richest clubs in the world, that's what we need to do.
Yeah, but DaveO, living within your means doesn't mean like you can spend what you sell. It means you spend what you receive, like whether it's revenue or whatever.
In installments.
No, but however you choose to do it, everyone buys in installments. But the idea of living within your means, like if I may only need £30,000 to live a decent life, but if I'm earning 60, I might spend the other 30. I'm still living within my means if I do so. The idea that I have to somehow it doesn't work like that.
No, in all seriousness, I think he's going to stay. I mean, he signed that contract 2 seasons ago. I don't know whether or not there's a clause in his contract that says he's got to play every game. Who knows? But I think at the end of the day, he's going to stay. But one would say that there's an argument that when you've got players in the squad that you think they've peaked or just about peaked, you kind of get some money for them and recycle it. You look at how Liverpool have sold in the transfer market over the years. They've done a very good job of it. And let's face it, we're sitting here now, and obviously from a sentimental point of view, we all love him and we want to keep him. He's great, etc., etc. But you look at everyone else look at the number of players on our books that we've kept for far, far too long. Is this an example of someone that if the Saudis came in for 60, 70 million, which they won't now because he doesn't want to go there, would you sell him? I mean, it's quite telling that no one else ever's really made a proper bid for him, have they? There's never been a talk, your Barca's, your Bayerns, your Reals, no one else. None of the really big boys have ever put in
unless I'm kind of being a little bit slow tonight. Who have Liverpool sold recently for a lot of money?
Dominic Solanke to Bournemouth, 25 million. That's a lot of money.
That's a fucking And who was it? The other guy, and the other guy.
That's a steal.
Yeah, and the reason I forgot those is because where are they now?
Ryan Babel,
a better one. Yeah, Babel. What's the other one? His name was Rian Brewster or something like that. Yeah, they sold him.
That was a lot of money. That was
Punky
a lot of money.
Brewster.
At the same time, just to push back, and maybe this is me going on a tangent now, so I apologize. But they have lost people like Sadio Mane on a free, Naby Keita on a free. They haven't upgraded that midfield in a long time. Roberto Firmino is about to go on a free. So I mean, some of their better players they haven't really sold for a lot of money.
Listen, Jack, you've been on the show long enough. Never let a fact get in the way of my narrative. Come on, now. You know how it works.
Yeah, that's amateur.
Come on.
Okay.
Sorry.
So it's fine. It's fine. So my question is, if a bid came in for Richarlison, we paid 60 million for him.
Yeah.
Bid came in for 50
sorry
million.
to speak here. We're all going to keep Son. Yeah, we're all agreed on that.
I think that
For-
was the
for this season, yeah, absolutely.
that was the conclusion.
Okay.
Yeah. Apart from you, David. Richarlison, if a bid came in for 45 million, would you take it, David?
That's a tough one, isn't it?
Credit to John for the question, because
Very well done, John. Good question from John. He's off. Is he on another run at the moment? He's always running.
he's injured, isn't he?
He's on his back and he's got a spasm.
Yeah,
I hope he's all right.
I've got a picture from him. He's lying on the floor watching us. So bless him.
Yeah, I've seen his feet as well. You need to sort them out. Those bunions.
Let's be honest. He's probably flicked over to Babe Station by now.
He's probably got friends on, doesn't he? He wants to know if Ross and Rachel are getting back together, as we all do. Well, Richarlison. I think the narrative about Richarlison, which Conte, to be honest, said as well, is that he can play across the front three. No, he can't. He's not a great footballer in terms of being in the build up. He might thrive under Ange Ball because of the pressing that we need to do, which kind of Kane and Sonny are less able to do. So he'll be useful there. He gets caught more offside than Chrissy Armstrong in his heyday. And I would say though, if someone gave us 45 million up front, not in instalments, I'd probably sell him. Yeah. To fund the Maddison deal, so we're not getting from fun.
It would always be in instalments. They're all in instalments. Every transfer's in instalments. Do you think Man City don't pay in instalments? Of course they pay in instalments.
I should not have mentioned that word tonight.
Man. So tonight's theme word is instalments, sponsored by a mortgage broker. Yeah, no. If we got offered 45 million for Richie, I'd sell him to fund the Maddison and the Alex.
You buy your house outright, did you? No, you had a mortgage on it. When you go and buy a new telly, do you pay it all up front? Sometimes, maybe if you're rich, but most people put it on a credit card or pay in instalments. So stop banging on about instalments.
I don't think I started the instalment chat. I think that was Jack.
Well, I'm putting.
Actually, it was you. Actually, you were in trying to bait HG, and now you turned it on me. We're wise to your ways. Anyway, at the end of the day, Richie, if it's 45 million, yeah, I'll take that.
Let us know in the chat what you think. Would you take 45 million for Richarlison? I don't know why I made him French.
And would you put a TV on your card?
50 plus for add-ons, yeah, absolutely. I think the thing is, I think Richie will be great in Ange Ball, actually, because he presses. He's very good at pressing and running around a lot. We'd love Lamella in that system, let's be honest. HG, Richarlison, 45 million. Is he worth it? Would he go for 45?
Now we're doing David Ginola jokes. So, yes, he's worth it. No, Richarlison you don't sell. Like, I never really wanted him. I don't particularly rate him. But it just means you sell him, you're then creating another hole in the squad. And we do need a squad. So it makes no sense to do that. You want to try and sell the players that you don't really want to keep around rather than trying to sell the players that you might actually need around.
Yeah.
So, unless we really think that one of those kids that we have are a future superstar, which there's really no evidence of them being able to do it at a senior level, you keep Richarlison. It may only be one more year, but there's no reason. He wants to prove himself at Spurs. He wants to he's not going to play in his favoured position. Weirdly, he's only ever going to be probably someone to play down the left or to play up top. But that's kind of what he chose to do. That's the role he's picked. But no, you don't sell Richarlison for 45 million. No.
And for me, if Kane, we'll come on to Kane in a minute, but he's a fantastic player. This can't be true. If you're watching this show, there's 189, there's more than that watching now. 54 likes. Smash that like button. It's embarrassing. Come on, sort yourselves out.
Please.
No.
If we get 100 likes, I'll get Louis Armstrong. I'll get Louis Armstrong to play another tune in the living room for you. All right.
Oh, just what we want. Jack, Richarlison, high press player, perfect for the Ange system. You'd be bonkers to sell him for 45 million, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think we all sort of feel a bit upset with the fact that we paid 60 million for Richarlison, and I can understand how with every transfer that sort of kind of makes up a bit of your opinion, is like he's got to earn back that big price tag. And I think Richarlison may never earn back that big price tag, to be honest. I don't know if he ever really was a 60 million pound player really for Spurs and what we actually wanted him to be doing. But at the same time, I think he is a useful player for us. To say that he isn't a useful and valuable player to us, I think would be a mistake, because he offers something very different to what Harry Kane does, albeit it's not world class or anything, but it is very different to what he offers. And the fact that he presses very hard, he's kind of a nuisance to deal with. And he also, as well, is very good in his sort of movement in the box. Harry Kane's movement in the box, I think, is probably better, but the way Richarlison does it is kind of done a bit differently, where he's just sort of occupies defenders, I think, with just all of the different types of ways that he either is just roughhousing them or kind of just constantly trying to get in behind or trying to hold it up. And he's just a bit of kind of a lot to deal with, if maybe to put it that way. And so I feel like Richarlison, if we were to miss out on him, or not have him for Postecoglou this season, we would have to think about replacing him. And I don't feel like that's another added to-do thing or to-do list item that we need to really be doing. I think it's already so much that we need to be looking at replacing and doing this summer. And if we had to replace Richarlison, I think that would just be another headache, and I wouldn't know if we would even spend it correctly. And so I really like him as well. I just like his backstory. I kind of liked him before he even came to Spurs. I feel like we shouldn't have spent the 60 million on him. That should have gone towards the center back.
50 plus add-ons were being correct
in installments as
but,
well.
But I mean, what's 10 million to friends and Daniel Levy? Nothing, We'd never had.
I enjoy his backstory and I enjoy his attitude, and I like him, the fact that he's also as well just a very humble player, despite maybe the way he behaves on the pitch. He is a very humble guy, and I do just like Richarlison as just just his character and everything. But that's not everything. That's also about what he does on the pitch, and maybe he can play that Kyogo role that we've been learning a lot about at Celtic next season, where he's sort of making those unselfish runs in behind, just making all the runs that sort of kind of keep sort of the center back line kind of honest, as well as keep them occupied. And I feel like Richarlison is sort of that kind of guy.
Rooty too. We apologise. 50 million plus add-ons. There you go.
Sorry.
Sorry, Dave?
To Rooty too. I'm saying sorry to him.
Oh, I thought you just had a case of Tourette's or something. Right. So Richarlison, we're saying keep. I would say that is a world-class attack, isn't it? I mean, Kulusevski, one of the best players on the right for Sweden has ever seen. Son, fantastic player, South Korean legend. Richarlison leads the line for Brazil, scored some worldies at the World Cup. Good pun. And Kane, England's greatest ever goal scorer. So that's a world-class attack, isn't it? Does anyone disagree with me? Just shake your head if you disagree with me.
Spurs have always had good attacks my whole life.
But that is world-class. That is world-class. There is no debate about that. That is
there are two world-class players in there for sure. There are two world-class players in there.
Yeah, it's up there with Les Ferdinand, Stefan Everson, and Chris Armstrong. Definitely.
So what we're saying, DaveO, is ENIC have built a world-class strike force at Spurs, yeah?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a world-class strike force. It was a half a season, very good strike force, and last season wasn't very good, and apparently that's all Conte's fault. There we go.
Of course you wouldn't know.
And let's say that the 50 million plus add-ons to Richarlison was Daniel extracting value from the transfer market by taking advantage of Everton's FFP deadline of June 30 last year by whacking down 50 million smackers for Richarlison.
We have two separate Golden Boot winners in our attack. I think with that as a world-class attack. Not many teams boast two separate Golden Boot winners in the same attack. And the other thing as well.
There you are with your facts again, Jack. Come on.
That didn't even require me to mention any numbers. But I do feel like Spurs, that's sort of, at least my lifetime, that's always been Spurs' strength. Like it's even Peter Crouch and that Jermaine Defoe to, I don't know, it's just we've always had in some way, like maybe even Soldado, I guess, was that one period of maybe not having a good attack, but then Harry Kane came around, so it's just sort
Soldado when they signed him. I was actually chatting to a Man United fan.
Everybody thought it would be good signing.
Everyone,
everyone.
He'd banged him in every bin until he came to Spurs. We'll fix you now.
Spurs have always ignored the defense, in my opinion, for a long time, whereas the attack, I think, has always been, not maybe world class always, but I think maybe world class, maybe now more so than ever.
I mean, the thing about those four players is that they were rarely on the pitch together last season because we only ever played with three.
Yeah.
But if you did have a front four like that, they all have something different. They all offer something different, and that's not a bad situation to be in. I don't expect to see all four of them play together this season that often. Maybe when we're desperately needing a goal, but still that an extra, like actually wanting to attack should help them all. Right? If Son really was injured last season and he's not injured next season, that should help as well. Same with Kulusevski. Even Richarlison got injured, didn't he? At the World Cup, he got injured. So it was a very disjointed year for all of them, not named Kane. And
I have to say, I mean, Adrian's making a point that we've had lots of world class or very good forwards, but never four like that all at the same time. In my opinion, I don't remember.
Berbatov and Keane, right? Berbatov and Keane at the same time is.
Yeah, but that's not four players, is it? It's not four players.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, hang on, wasn't there Berbatov, Keane, Defoe there?
Yep, and Ben.
Berbatov, Keane, Defoe is not as good, in my opinion, as Richarlison, Kane, and Son.
Oh, what about Crooks, Archibald, Falco?
That's before our time, Dave.
I wasn't born, Dave. It doesn't count. Let's move on.
What about Greaves, Gilzine? I'd say about our strikers with a little bit more history than you guys. I'm of the view of
Berbatov, Keane, Defoe, and Bent. But I wouldn't put those four ahead of those four.
Okay, but what I'm saying to you is that I think that with Tottenham, we've either had really good strikers or really shit strikers. We've never had it in the middle, have we? We've either had a real good.
Who cares? Right now,
it's better than most.
Really good forwards. That's the point.
It's better than most, I think, too. Most clubs don't get to have Jimmy Greaves and Harry Kane. Most clubs don't get to have.
But what I'm saying is, if in certain periods of our history, at the time of our playing squad, they're either really good or they're fucking awful.
Dave, do you want to slaughter a cow or not?
Say what?
Do you want to slaughter a cow tonight or what?
Do I want to straw for a cow? What's that?
Sacred cow. Do you want to play sacred cow tonight or not?
Do you want to play sacred cow or not?
Yeah, later.
Stop talking then. Stop talking, man.
I would say that we haven't got 4 world class. I'd say we've got 1 world class, one very good.
2.5.
We got 1.5.
No, we've got 2.5. Son's world class. No doubt in my mind. And Richarlison can be on his day. But he's
not,
never.
That's not world class, is it? It can be on his day.
To be fair, like Dean Marney could be world class on his day. Do you know what I mean? On his day, he's a very
with a hat trick. 2 of them were own goals on. Well, they weren't own goals; they were deflected in. But you know what I mean.
Talking about your badminton again.
Tuesday nights, mate. You need to come down, DaveO.
I'd fly halfway around the world just for it.
You should. Son, Fabrizio confirming Son stays at Spurs. He's got no plans to go to Saudi or join Saudi. I didn't know there was a team called Saudi. I've many things to do in the PL. Money doesn't matter to me now, and the pride of playing football. To play my favourite league is important. I want to play more for Tottenham. So I saw this interview. He was at the airport giving it, and
was he speaking in American at the time? Because he's dropped the U out of favourite.
Korean, actually, Dave. So I suppose.
Well, Jack's happy without the U in the favourite, but I'm not.
I'm not a Klinsmann fan because he's a former heir to Berlin. I love Klinsmann his Spurs era, but I don't like Klinsmann he's a horrible heir to Berlin manager. So I kind of resent him for those days.
And America, what about when he was in charge of America? Were you happy?
He wasn't all that great. He wasn't really that great. Yeah, he was a bit overrated, I think, at the time.
Well.
But I think during that era, I actually fell out of love with the USA team. So probably even more of a reason that I don't like Klinsmann as the manager.
Not much.
Can I just get pointed out? You're getting trolled in the comments about your coffee.
I did an entire stream talking about my different, policies and different, sort of opinions on coffee. And I actually use instant coffee. So that's like a guy, talking about, how he prefers this and that. And yet he eats off like a paper plate, type of thing.
You'd go down well with our Melbourne demographic. That's all they do is make coffee.
Yeah, but did you know Jack has an alter ego?
When I take off the hat, yeah.
When you take off the hat, you become. There we go. Lots of positive.
But Ben is right. I was talking in a sense. I believe in everything I said on that stream, but you could say none of it's actually put into practice what I was saying. So it's kind of all a lot of waffle.
Oh, we did.
If you say that you have instant coffee in Sydney, it's like you're like a social pariah.
Massive shout out to Gov.
Hello, Gov. Is he having his bourbon in his back garden?
Surely I hope so.
Yeah, he loves his bourbon.
He does. And has always been a very good supporter of the Cheese Room. So welcome, Gov. Gov, channel member. So, switching gears, I think we need to move on from that. We've got some more sacred cows. We've got some more marry, snog, avoid, and keep coming up, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, so Saudi League. We do need to talk about the Saudi League because apparently Al Kahol are interested in Jack Grealish, and there is, there we go. We've got Ruben Neves joining the Saudis, 55 million, which is pretty amazing, to be honest. That is amazing money. Ruben Neves, very good player, and in his prime, no less. But then we see Newcastle are, sensationally signing Ruben Neves on loan. What do we make of all this, Jack? And I'm low on beer and pork scratching. So if you could go on one of your rambling monologues about Saudi Arabia, that would be fantastic.
Oh, I'll try to keep it as non-political as possible. They're trying to compete with the Premier League to be the new Super League, or at least the Super League for less competitive players. Maybe is what it is. Players that don't feel like maybe trying too hard, but they also still want to see some of their buddies that they saw from the Serie A and from the La Ligas and whatnot of the world. So I think it's interesting that there are two different sort of leagues that are just compiling some of the most high wage players, I guess, across Europe. I would make the argument that it's nice to see a bunch of players going to a league where it is going to be, let's be frank, not very competitive, or it is going to be sort of, not taken all that seriously, despite, maybe that might be offensive to some. I don't think it is. I don't think people are going to take it seriously. And we will then get like a big sort of refresh or a big like kind of clear out of a bunch of players that might have maybe sort of had their head turned towards financial incentives and like their head turned towards, just sort of like contracts and big money wages. And now we're going to get theoretically a bunch of hungry, enthusiastic players that want to prove something. They're going to now be coming into the Premier League. So you could see that as like a slight positive. I don't know. I kind of hate the money that's in football. I've hated it for a long, long time. I find it that even what Spurs have spent, and a lot of people complain with how little Spurs have spent, I feel like we've spent a small nation's GDP on just right backs alone with how many failed signings we've had. So I feel like no team at all should be spending more than 200 million in a summer window. It feels like even Man City's backline would probably knock out half of, the poverty and, the hunger around the world, if they just sold their backline, not even their whole team. So I don't like the money that's in football. I don't like how it's changed the landscape and how it seems like if you do the right things, if you operate the right way, if you do things smartly and efficiently and competently, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win anything. It just means you're probably going to finish 10th in the Premier League. It feels like we're in a depressing state of even if you operate as well as you can, you're going to get flushed out by blank check clubs. And I think part of the reason is that also it seems like we've kind of become a bit acceptant of it and a bit sort of conditioned to it, where now we're expecting our clubs to be spending 200, 300 million a year. And maybe in some cases that's the case, because if you have a sports washing owner, then you probably do expect a guy to spend 200, 300 million a year because he's doing it for a reason. But I don't really like how we've reached this state where the Premier League, in my own opinion, is the Super League. I think the fact that Newcastle have bought Tonali for 70 million is like proof that the Premier League is becoming the Super League. And I'm not for it. I don't like it. I wish I could, look at the rest of Europe and think that it was balanced. We had that era where the Serie A was the best in the world. We had an era where like the Bundesliga at one stage was one of the better leagues in the world. And I don't think that's ever going to happen again. I think it's just going to be the Premier League becomes the Super League, and then Saudi Arabia becomes like a senior living retirement home for them. Rant over. Tried my best.
HD.
Like, because most of the players that have gone there are either really at the back end of the career or certainly approaching the back end of the career. I'm not that fussed. Will it somehow sports wash and change my opinion of the Saudis? No, I don't think so. Am I going to sit there and watch the Saudi League? No, not interested. It feels like they're just going there for one last payday. I realise that Neves is a bit of an outlier there, and is a young kid, I think a young Portuguese kid who might be going out there too. But if that's what they want to do with their money, then so be it. I have no doubt that there are ulterior motives for them doing this. However, is it really any different than when the Americans? I mean, it's different when it comes to numbers, but people have invested money over the years in various leagues, in various clubs, trying to change things up. It's just that the Saudi one feels different, but it's exactly the same principle. So I've not really thought about it too much, apart from how can we sell them some of our rubbish players for lots of money. That's the most important thing to me. For the players that go there and they decide to play in that league and make a fortune, that's their call. But I don't look at it and see it as being this big evil in football, because football has kind of been like that for a very long time. Just somehow it's different now. I'm not sure it is different now. It's just it's just a different area of the world.
You feel like it was always headed here, like this was, yeah.
No, but when I was a kid, I mean, David will know this, but there was always a big five in England that were, richer, bigger clubs, and we didn't win everything every year. But Liverpool were in the 80s were the team. Everton were, when I was 7 or 8. Everton were usually second. Man United were the Spurs of that time, where they spent a lot of money and never really got anywhere. So it's.
But don't you feel like it's the Super League, the fact that Forest have signed Keylor Navas on loan for $200,000 a week just to keep them up? Like that's like,
But isn't? But I mean that's the straight. Are you saying that the Premier League is then bad because we've done that too?
It's flushed with too much cash, I think, in comparison to the rest of the world, so it becomes the Super League.
If people want to watch the Premier League, which they clearly do, the money is coming from people around the world. To me, do I want that money going to the owners of the football clubs, or do I want it going to the players? And I'd always rather it went to the players. I understand that they earn more in a week than I do in 2 years, some of them, a lot of them. But I'm not, I guess kind of fair play to them. They're in an industry where that's possible. A really good mate of mine just happens to be very good at maths and makes a fortune. But he's not any different to me. He just has a skill that not many people have.
And he's not evil for that. Yeah.
No, I mean, and so I understand why they want to go, because if you're on the bench at Chelsea, and you can earn more money and play a bit of football in some sunshine, you're probably going to take that choice. It just happens to be Saudi Arabia. Had it been Spain or Italy, like it used to be 20, 30 years ago, I don't know. I understand that the Saudis, obviously there are serious question marks, but from a football perspective, if they want to go, so be it, and it won't change my opinion of the questionable things that the Saudis have done.
I think that you got to look back at. I mean, how did the Premier League start? It was a breakaway from the top 4 or 5 clubs who wanted more TV money and did the deal with Sky, right? Of which Tottenham was part of that. Yeah. Gary Neville's behaviour this week always makes me chuckle because he's come out very strongly about Saudi Arabia, whilst he was more than happy to take the Qataris' money and go and work for beIN Sports at the World Cup. And we all know that
their money.
Yeah, and we all know that Saudi Arabia and Qatar have got a big beef diplomatically. In the Middle East. We also know that he was dead against the European Super League, whilst saying that on Rupert Murdoch's Sky Sports, because of course Rupert Murdoch and Sky Sport and Fox were excluded from any Super League discussions and how TV money was going to be made. So Gary. Obviously, with Salford FC, with the money they pump into that division and that league and the dominance there. So, God bless him. I just think that if you can also, I mean, there was someone, one of the big supporters of the Cheese Room, I questioned whether any of us has kicked more than 5 yards of a football in our life in the last couple of weeks. But if I was a professional player who was rightly advised, in terms of coming through the ranks, I'd probably look to have 1 to 2 to 3 years at Dortmund, because they seem to have a very good system there, bringing through talented young players. And you might not get that time in the Premier League. I'd come and have my peak years in the Premier League or in the major European league, and then I'd look to finish off in Saudi Arabia. I mean, I'd have a lot of problems doing that on many levels. But if you're plotting out a career to make the most money out of your talent, that's what you would do. And Saudi Arabia at the moment, What's the next World Cup up for bidding rights? Where are we up to now? So the next one.
I don't think 2030 has been decided, although I think they've said it was going to Argentina, Uruguay, although I don't think it's actually been decided. So probably 34 is next.
Yeah, so I think whichever is the next one to be awarded, Saudi Arabia are front and centre in trying to get that bid. I think Infantino is well in cahoots on that one, and I think that's where we're heading. I think that's their game, is to get the World Cup in Saudi Arabia, and that's part of their strategy as to what they're doing now. So with the cash-struck clubs in Europe because of COVID, what the Saudi Arabia money is doing is provided liquidity into the market to get players off your books, whether they're at the end of their contracts or near the end of their contracts. It's an opportunity for Levy to try and sell some of his inventory that's not going to be sold anywhere else to Saudi Arabia, and that's what he can do. And obviously, to finish off, what the troubling thing is the kind of the murky waters of the ownership of Chelsea and Newcastle, because it looks like the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia is an investor in Todd Bowley's fund or group, which in turn has invested and bought Chelsea. And whilst at the same time you have the issue, they've obviously bought Newcastle. And don't forget that ENIC were told they had to sell all their holdings in the other clubs that they owned about 2 to 3 years after they bought Tottenham, which Daniel gave in one of his communications to the supporter base at Cambridge University earlier this year.
There's a few things I'd like to say on this. Firstly, I've seen the chat 5 Champions League spaces, fifth spot gets Champions League football. I think that's next season, isn't it?
It's not guaranteed for certain. It depends on which countries do well in Europe, I think. So of the 4 new spots,
I thought it was the nation's coefficient, isn't it? Basically, it's based.
Yeah, but so that depends on how the clubs have done in Europe. Yeah,
isn't that historic over like 3 rolling seasons or something? And we're at the top of it. So
I think it's based on the season before. What they came out and said was not what they ended up doing. But of the 4 new spots, I think 2 of them have gone to lower ranked nations, and then the other 2 are based on which nations have done well in the previous season. Now, obviously, the Premier League is usually pretty strong in that area, so is usually one of those 2. And if that was to happen, then it would go to the 5th place team in the Premier League. But there's no guarantee that the Premier League would always get one every year. It could be Italy and Germany.
It's not a guarantee, but as we sit now, the Premier League would get one.
Well, bearing in mind we had a finalist in every competition, right, this year. Yeah, so, had it been this year, we'd have got one. And there's no reason to think that next year we won't, because next year we have 8 teams in Europe now? Because West Ham got to stay in it. Yeah. So we'll have 8 teams and 8 chances to get lots of points. And I'm pretty certain that the coefficient points, it doesn't matter if it's Champions League or Conference League, they get the same per victory. So whoever's in the Conference League, was it Villa? If Villa do really well in the Conference League next year, then that will help the Premier League out when it comes to a 5th spot. But it's not officially guaranteed.
No, but it's quite likely, I would say, given the last 3 years' trend, if you just take that next season, not this season, next season, I'm pretty sure I'm saying that, we will potentially have 5 Champions League spots. Yeah. So you move from being a big 4 to a big 5, if you like, the big 6 has gone to a big 7 with Newcastle in it and the Saudi money.
Big 8? Will there be a big 8?
Probably, yeah, probably, no doubt about it. But you're going to talk about big 6 is going to be fine, but you've got 5 Champions League places. And I think that was part of the compromise from the Super League stuff, wasn't it? The Champions League changes, doesn't it? I think at the same time to a massive league format, like 24 clubs in a league table, and I think you play 10 games.
It's 36, and you play 10 games each.
Correct, yeah.
But yeah,
Football Manager lots. There you go. That makes me qualified to talk about it, surely. So yeah, for me, the Saudi stuff. I mean, I think Newcastle's corrupt as hell, and obviously they're going to get favours from the Saudis. That's almost an absolute given. But Saudi Arabia is changing, and a lot of people won't like me saying this. They've got an appalling human rights record. I don't condone that whatsoever. But Saudi Arabia is changing, and they're having to change because ultimately the world's moving away from oil fundamentally. So they are opening up to tourism. They are doing some amazing projects in the country, and they are relaxing their laws as well. So I think over the next 10 years, you'll see them going to be a big player. And obviously, they've got a lot of money, and they want to make a mark in the football market. So the question from me is, will you take Tongi Ndombele for 50 million quid and please take these players away from us? Because the elephant in the room that we haven't spoken about is the fact that we've got, 30, how many full-time first-team pros?
I think it's like 33 or 34 right now when everyone's back on loan.
Absolutely mental amount of first-team players. So we've really got to sell some players this summer.
I said something very controversial on Monday night show in Keep, Sales, Marry, Divorce on the defence. I said keep Reggie.
I look, Reggie can play in a 4, no doubt about it at all. I would happily keep Reggie.
Love Reggie.
Are you waving your fist at me?
Love Reggie. I think Reggie was actually a bit hard done by. I feel like the reason he was moved on was simply for homegrown reasons, and I think then it was sort of spun that was Sessegnon as like Conte's first choice and like all these sort of things. I'm not sure if that was really totally the case or the scenario. I think what was the case is that we had a homegrown problem. The majority of our homegrown players are terrible, but we still need to make up sort of the quotas for it. And Sessegnon was one of them. And we had to move on Reguilón. We had to make that choice between Reguilón and Sessegnon. And we decided to go with Sessegnon for homegrown reasons and give Sessegnon a chance, who actually, by the way, is worth, I think he was brought in for 5, 6, 7 million more than even Emerson was. And he's been around also longer than Emerson has. And I think that probably that last season was sort of maybe used as his make or break season, if you will. And I think he clearly broke, not only when it came to his form, but also when it came to his injuries. The guy's made of glass.
He is
hang on, Jack. Like, unfortunately, if you look at Spurs' history, we've kept injured players for a very long time, despite the fact that they were woeful or injured or
they could also be terrible
whenever
and
they played. Yeah.
I have to say, Reggie.
I think Reggie. Just to finish my point, I think he's good in a back 4. I think he's
right. So hold that thought, Jack. 1 second. My question to you, and I don't
ahead.
like cutting you off, but I think this is a really pertinent point. If you're picking a back 4 right now, who's your left back from the players we've got? Because for me, Reguilón will be up there. You know, you don't know what Udogie looks like. You know what Sessegnon looks like. You don't want any of that. You know what Perisic looks like. You don't want any of that. And the alternative to that is your boy, the boy from the Valleys, Ben Davies. So to me, Reguilón is probably the best out of that bunch.
I agree with you entirely. I don't know if I'll say it better myself. I think Ben Davies has proven not to be good enough in a back 4, either as a center back or as a left back. He can't do either. He's more of a back 3 specialist. He's not even that good in a back 3, but that is sort of his speciality. And Reguilón has shown to be competent in back 4, especially under Jose Mourinho, which was, let's remember, very defensive football as well. And I think Reguilón did a lot better than maybe people give him credit for. So if we are going to go for somebody that can actually play in a back 4, Reguilón is probably the best candidate right now. We'll find out whether Udogie can actually do it or not. But I'm with you, caller. I think it's Reguilón and Udogie for next season.
He can press. He's got the fitness, you know, and
he has a good cross as well. People don't feel like his cross was. I think he had like 4 or 5 assists under Nuno before he even was moved on. Like it was, I don't know. People, like I said, the Reguilón, I think story got a little bit muddled up at one stage.
It was that lovely piece of ham he got from Jose for Christmas.
That does stick in the
his off the field antics we don't miss. That's for sure.
And he went to Lamella for the COVID breakdown. Lockdown.
He's very good at Call of Duty. I think he won us a trophy. Actually, Dave, he won us the Call of Duty like Spurs trophy or something like that. I think a bunch of other Premier League teams were over COVID. A bunch of Premier League teams were like competing for a Call of Duty trophy, and I think he won it.
I mean, look, let's be honest. Udogie is a young talent. He had a good season, yeah. Did anyone see the goal he led to conceding for the Italy under-21s the other night? And he did score as well, by the way, so we can't take that away from him. But it was basic stuff, I think. And he plays wing-back. That's the biggest thing. He plays wing-back. So of the players you've got at the club right now as an established left-back in a 4, I don't think you can look further than Reggie. I really don't.
I mean, our first game is Brentford away, right? And it's not going to be an easy game. We know that. So if you're literally thinking of which side will start that first game,
Davis,
then I think
right now.
I think Davis or Reguilon because of the Premier League experience. I don't want Sessegnon there. I don't want Perisic there. And Udogie, like, because of how Ange will want to play, there's a chance that might happen. If he falls in love with him, but if I was to bet, it wouldn't be on Udogie for the first game at least. Maybe the first home game, but even then, the first home game is Man United, so you might still want to go with a bit of experience. But I would keep, weirdly enough, I would keep 3. I would keep Udogie, and I would keep Davis, and I would keep Reguilon, and the others can go. Yeah, they're the 3 that I would, because we will need options, and I think we've seen with Ange at Celtic, he does rotate. He doesn't keep the same players. It feels like his teams seem to be based on what they've done in training, or there's a long-term plan involved. Spurs won't have that many games compared to usual next season, but still, I think that it's a chance for all of them. Like we may well be shifting players the last 2 weeks of August, and Ange will take 6 weeks before any decisions are made about who he doesn't want around. But that first game is what, August 13th? I'd be surprised if it wasn't someone who's been at the club for 2 or 3 seasons. But what I will say, I saw a comment. I've got to go and find it now. Dang it! There was this comment here. You've moved it. Here we go. This one. I would agree with that. I would absolutely agree with that. Harvey White is not a fullback, but if we've got the ball like Ange wants, and you want to have a midfielder, Zinchenko can't defend. So there were games where Zinchenko got found out for Arsenal, but Harvey White, that's not a bad idea. It really isn't a bad idea.
Can Harvey White make a huddle when we're 2-0 down, though?
Can he do what?
Can he make a huddle like Zinchenko does when you're 2-0 down?
I don't know. Maybe if Ange gets the light bulb out, then he might be inspired to do that. But that's really not a bad idea. Like, I was impressed with Harvey White when he played. Probably was pre-season or some kind of random game. But he's a smart player, and Ange will like smart players. And I've heard worse ideas. I'll put it like that. I'm not sure it's going to happen, but that's not a bad idea. I'd much rather see him play fullback than flipping Sessegnon or Perisic or half the other options we have.
Okay. Would you keep Perisic for up top, HG? Would you keep him as a rotation option for up top?
I think that, like, if we're going to have players around that we're not really thinking, like, if we want to loan out a couple of youngsters, and then there's a spot for Perisic, that's okay. I don't think anyone's going to take on his wages. We committed to it. It's not a bad idea to have. Like, again, if you're looking for a goal, like, Perisic has one move down that left hand side, but it consistently gets him half a yard, and we know he can assist. So he's not on my list of ones that I would definitely keep, but I wouldn't be upset if he was still around.
Okay. Well, let's move on to Dave's piece de la résistance.
Jesus.
Did you like that?
Very good.
Let's have Sacred Cow. Dave, come on, hit us with your Sacred Cow. This is your section. Over to you. I'm going on mute. I'm eating pork scratchings. I'm handing the mic.
Well, you're doing the first one.
That's fine. As long as I've got enough time to chomp through a scratching, I'm fine.
Okay. All right. So this is how Sacred Cow. So this is what we did last summer. So it's back. And I say back for this summer as well.
Don't tell me he's frozen at the wrong moment. Oh, he's back.
Am I freezing?
No, you're good.
Okay, so basically what we'll do is we'll do 2 rounds of Sacred Cow. So these are topics and players, current players or previous players, managers, things like that. Sacred Cows, those who are loved by certain sections of the fan base and those who are meh about them as well. So we're going to do 2 rounds. The first round will be between Caller and HG. And the topic of choice for today. He likes to get his face out the window at transfer deadline day. He's the king of the jungle. He's Rosie47. It's Mr. Harry. We should have gotten him in for the last 4 weeks. It'd have given him a kick out the arse. Redknapp. So the person who will be in favour of Harry Redknapp, I believe, is you, caller. Has the scratchings out your mouth?
Well, I mean, that's news to me, but yeah, I can do that.
Did you want to do that, or did you want to do Paratici?
No, let's do Harry. I'm happy with that. I mean, H is going to eviscerate me, but
I'll sacrifice any cow.
No. Right. Are you right? So it's 2 minutes when I say go on the clock. So this is for caller and the case for Harry Redknapp. Go.
I don't believe there is a Spurs fan out there that doesn't like Harry Redknapp. Not only is he the king of the jungle and has lovely puddings, jam roly-polies from his missus, he led us to the Champions League for the first time in history. The first time in history. Just let that sink in. He presided over a very average squad, got the most out of them, and took us to the promised land in the Champions League. And not only that, did bloody well in the Champions League as well. The emergence of Gareth Bale, we had players like Luka, Berbatov. He got the best out of all of them. And look, anyone who gets to the Champions League with Crouchy playing up front is worth their weight in gold. Transfer deadline day, let's talk about that for a second. Rolling down the window and giving interviews was his forte, and it was fantastic. He was fantastic for the fans to listen to, someone they could listen to, someone they could relate to. And I do think that Harry, got us playing attacking football. You look at Aaron Lennon banging it down the wing. You look at that run, that league. I always remember the event in my lifetime of being happiest at Spurs probably wasn't Lucas Moura getting us to the final Amsterdam, although that was pretty sexy, I've got to be honest. But the first time we got to the Champions League, Crouchy's header at the Etihad, what a game. And I was honestly on the floor in bits. I couldn't believe we'd finally done it. And that was the emergence of us as a club. He laid the foundations for everything that came after him. He was wronged by Levy. He did nothing more than pimp himself out for the
5 seconds.
He did nothing more than pimp himself out to the England job, and every other job didn't deserve it.
And it's over. Thank you very much.
Did you just get a xylophone on me?
I did. I just got Ruth Maddock from Heidi High. It's just turned up. We've got Louis Armstrong. Heidi High. We've got Ruth Maddock, Louis Armstrong. They're all here today. All right. The case against Mr. Harry Redknapp. I hand over to my good friend and showbiz chum, Mr. HG from Vienna. Go.
All right. So I'll give Caller credit because he mentioned every single good thing that Redknapp did. And Redknapp is not a bad manager. But you talked about how the squad wasn't that good. Are you kidding me? That squad was incredible. Compared to the one we have now, it was better. It's probably the best squad we've ever had was under Redknapp. And he screwed it up massively because he decided to focus on himself and the England job. And that's why he will never be more than just a good manager for Spurs in my eyes. He decided that he was more important than Spurs. He didn't know what he had with Modric, didn't think he was a central midfielder. He didn't know what he had with Bale, almost sold him to Birmingham City. Alex McLeish saw the talent in Gareth Bale, and Harry Redknapp didn't. That should be enough. Harry Redknapp is a very lucky man. He knows how to build a team. It was a very good 4-4-2, traditional, proper football 4-4-2, big man up top, little man up top. There's nothing wrong with any of that, but it's not the football world that we live in now. That squad from 2011-12 should have made the Champions League, regardless of Chelsea winning the Champions League. We were top 3 for most of it. It beggars belief that people seem to somehow forget that we fell apart. We had to deal with AVB and Tim Sherwood because of Harry Redknapp. I understand why people are like, oh, he's a charmer, he talks a good game. Well, I'm not being funny, but there are other people out there who talk a good game, but you wouldn't want them to be in charge of anything. I just don't. I don't understand the love for Harry Redknapp. Decent guy, did his best. Grateful for the times we had, but
5 seconds.
frankly, we should have done more with that squad that he had.
My xylophone went a bit muted then.
I love your
No,
xylophone.
we heard it. We heard
Did
it.
you?
I like the fact you splashed out on an additional effect this season.
Get Ruth Maddock from Heidi High. She's
You're
here.
hemorrhaging viewers now. So who won?
Are we hemorrhaging again? Oh, no. Right, Jack, who won then?
Hit like if you like Sacred Cow. Don't. There's no other option.
Redknapp was my first manager, sort of right as I was getting into Spurs, but HG's arguments were compelling. And also as well, I feel like I don't feel as passionate about it because, like I said, I was sort of just getting into Spurs at the time. But I found that argument very convincing on a lot of factors. So I'm going to go with HG.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not saying that Redknapp is bad. I just think that we should have done better, much better.
I was expecting to agree with Collar because I was a newer fan at the time. I was expecting to agree with Collar because I saw Redknapp. Like, yeah, he gave me some nice things. You know, he gave me some nice things.
This was the thing for me that did it. You know, he was answering. Yeah.
There was also there's also the question of him coming out when. So if you remember when Modric was on Abramovich's yacht, right, and there was the statement, and then there was the bid from Chelsea. And Redknapp came out and said, well, if he wants to go, he should go. All I will say is there's more to it than just that. And that's one of the reasons why he's not at the club. He was sacked. And I'll leave it at that. All right.
Thanks for that, Dave.
Pleasure. Now, well, you can work out what you can work out. Now, has anyone got is there a xylophone in Birmingham where you are, Caller, or Vienna?
There isn't, no.
Okay, we'll need to have a timer here.
Okay.
So the next round, and this is a special one for my good showbiz friend and supporter of the Sacred Cow in New York. We are going to be tonight's second and final Sacred Cow of the evening is Mr. Bryan Gil. So, unsurprisingly, Jack, I'm asking you to
got it sorted.
Is that a comedy?
We're all testing our alarms.
Is that comedy time? So
I've got it sorted. I'm gonna do the intros. The reigning, undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, representing Bryan Gil in the red corner. He hails from Brooklyn. Jack, go.
Hail Messi, how he should be named. Dropped my phone as I said that, but he is fresh off being a European champion. He probably does value his Spelling Bee trophy, maybe is slightly higher than this European trophy. But in all seriousness, I think Bryan Gil has been hard done by his entire career. He's been brought in for a big price tag. I understand. I think it's probably one of the transfers that Parrott, as much as I love Bryan Gil and what he could bring to Spurs in the future, probably one of the transfers that maybe, made it too much for and sort of has been kind of slated for that, despite, I think, always taking advantage of the opportunities that he has been given. And he's been given very, very, very few. I feel like Bryan Gil has shown that he's a creative winger. He can be able to play through the middle. He can play on the left. He can play on the right. And it seems like anybody that seems to bring him into the team, what you get is pressing, and when you get is positivity, and when you get is a lot of energy and creativity. I feel like Bryan Gil, like I said, hard done by maybe the majority of his career. I understand the price tag has been extreme, but he's at the end of the day not been given too many chances, and the chances he has been given, I think he's done much better than maybe other players have, like a Lucas Moura or a Steven Bergwijn or a Jack Clark, and maybe the list goes on after that. So Bryan Gil, I want to see him given another chance under Ange Postecoglou, especially a team where we are going to be a bit more possession dominant. He's actually played for majority defensive managers that don't really like, I think people of his type of build and of his type of technical skill. So I feel like Bryan Gil could be given a chance under Postecoglou. It's up to him to take it. But by the looks of things, he seems to take it with other managers, especially over in La Liga. So I'm curious to see if he can do it. Especially also, he plays for a defensive manager, so he's not against pressing or defending. I'm just excited to see him do it for a different manager in Ange Postecoglou. And he's fresh off a trip from Mykonos. So I think he's feeling refreshed.
Well,
Do I have plenty more? Yeah, there you go. It's almost like, just quickly before Dave goes, it's almost like I've done. This is probably not my best work with Bryan Gil. It's like, when I'm more natural ranting about Bryan Gil, I think in other streams that we've done in the past, I think that's my better work. So, Dave, this could be a win for you. This could be. I feel like I've done. Yeah, I think for a fact, Dave, I've done better rants about him in the past. So not my best work.
Jack, the cow is the cow, and that's
this is the big moment. I fumbled in the final, but pressure's on.
That's how we work within the cow.
The cow is the cow. But if you allow me to reintroduce you, Dave, here's the thunder from down under, Dave. Oh, go.
Well, I'm doing so cacao with like a halo of sunlight coming off the top of my head, as befitting my almost godlike presence in the lower North Shore of Sydney. So, Bryan Gil, I voted him for the worst transfer at the inaugural Cheesies last season, and it summed up the lack of joined-up thinking of our club. We at a time where we needed to seriously strengthen the first team, we bring in a left winger, a touchline hugging winger. We don't do touchline hugging wingers. We haven't done one since about Tony Galvin in the 80s, right? And so he turns up. The best thing, I've got to be honest to Gil, we've got to be balanced in the cow of the sacredness and the balance. We need to have that balance because the best thing he's ever done for Tottenham was facilitate Eric Coco Lamela going the other way. And so for that, when the Levy-funded Tottenham Museum goes up in next to the London Olympic Stadium, we will be having a statue of Bryan Gil because he was the lightweight, paperweight for Eric Coco Lamela. So what has Bryan brought to the club? I remember when he was Frankfurt away in the Champions League, I remarked to the people watching it, it was like he was the competition winner from a Spanish village school to come and play with the big boys for the evening. He kept getting knocked off the ball by the Germans. I was just surprised he didn't bring his pet donkey friend from the Spanish village to come and play with him as well. Oh, no, that was Clement Longley. So Bryan, his greatest moment was, as I said, the make weight for a transfer. So what Bryan should have done to acclimatise himself to the English game is get his agent to demand, veritably stamp his fist on the table of Levy's office to say, no, I won't go back to Seville. No, I won't go back to Valencia. I want to acclimatise to the English league and the English way of life. I'll go and play MK Dons. I'll go and play for QPR. That's what he should have done. He got easily knocked off the ball. He's a Europa League winner. So's Eric Coco Lamela. That's all you need to know.
I'm afraid I need to stop you there. I should say he's the reigning undisputed heavyweight EDKL champion of the world, but I missed that bit.
Champion of the world. Well done.
Yeah.
Well done.
You sound like Trump doing those intros, by the way.
I think that was standard. That was standard Yank. I think that was a good one.
Yeah. Okay, you're the best one to obviously judge.
If the intros were a highlight, then we've got a problem. So vote now. Let's have a chat. Just tell us who you think the winner is, DaveO or Jack, or we could go Hill in, Hill out, and we'll get back to the results.
He's a Europa and spelling bee winner, everybody.
He absolutely
don't want to influence the votes.
And let's face it, he's got beautiful floppy hair. For my money, I agree with HG. Harry Redknapp was not all that, but I think I argue the case valiantly for him. And I think that I'm afraid DaveO was, not talking good stuff really. I am a Hill Messiist, so I'm biased. But let us know what you think in the comments, and we will get to it. But we've got our next round of marry, snog, avoid, or keep, sell, loan.
Look at that. It's the way you've put this program together tonight. This shows, look at this. That's fantastic. You are genius.
It is flowing like I can't say. It was something rude into my head, and I was thinking of our PG rating, so I'm not going to go down that route, but you can draw your own conclusions. Bryan Gil, would you, I take it you'd just sell him, DaveO?
Again, I'd sell him again, yes.
I've got to say, it looks like Jack's the winner in the chat so far. So there you go.
Not my best work, though. I've had much better rants. If anybody who's listened to these Friday shows in the past, they know for a fact anybody who listens to the Friday shows knows for a fact I've had much better work. with Bryan Gil in the past.
That was a really good low blow. It's like, yeah, I've won, but I really didn't do a good job, and I still won.
It's kind of like
right.
a GG's after winning, a GG's
Yeah,
after
yeah,
winning.
exactly. Good point.
DaveO, let's back to more pressing matters. You've clearly lost. Bryan Gil, would you keep him around for Ange? Would you loan him?
No, just get rid of him.
Get rid of him. Okay, HG.
Of course, I'd keep him. He's a winger. Ange wants wingers. Let him hug the touchline. It's a no-brainer.
Okay, and Jack.
I actually wish I mentioned just what HG said right there. For the Ange system, Bryan Gil fits exactly what Ange wants. A guy that can hug the touchline, take on his man, and create for others, basically. And he does all of those things quite well and presses off the ball. And also, as well, I think Selhurst Park would be the place I would loan him to, but I think they're still remembering his world-class performance over in South London. So maybe now is not the time. Keep him here in North London and then see how he does.
Okay, let's move swiftly on from Mr. Hill. Troy Parrott, DaveO, a couple of unsuccessful loans, trains of Harry Kane.
Sorry, who?
Troy Parrott.
The old Parrott gag never fails.
Troy
Parrott.
Shades of Harry Kane, I said.
I don't think Harry Kane's ever hung out with some dodgy Irish gangsters on holiday who are associated with Tyson Fury, but there you go. Mr. Parrott, how old is he now? 22, 21, 23? He's I mean, Ange might see something in him, and whenever you get your new manager in, you're not quite sure. You always you get a new manager in, and sometimes, not with Conte, obviously, that a young player comes out of nowhere, starts playing like Tanganga did with Jose, like Darren Caskey did with Ozzy Ardiles, for two examples over a year stretch of 30.
Yeah,
brilliant. Yeah. So other than that, he might see something in Parrott that we don't, maybe we'll be selling, because when we sell Son to fund Maddison, we might need Parrott. So there we go. Send him on loan.
Okay. HG, you might know how long's left on his contract. I'm not sure, to be honest.
I think it's to 24, maybe 25.
Another year or two, yeah.
Yeah, another year or two. Nothing long term. Like, Troy is still only 21. And he's not even 21 and a half. He's barely 21. I think obvious that a loan is probably the right thing for him. And again, it's got to be the right club as well. Like, you can't just say send him to the Championship and see what happens. You've got to have you don't want him managed by Antonio Conte. So therefore, I'm interested to see what Parrott does, because again, like with Harry Kane not being around for the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks of Ange training, Parrott's got a chance to really kind of show the boss what he can do. It's one of those weird ones that if you sell Richarlison, then Parrott has a much better chance of sticking around. But I don't think we want to do that. So for Troy, it really is. This season will be what will happen. Maybe 6 months somewhere, and we'll see what happens from then on. But a loan to begin with for sure. But I still have hope. Like, I saw things from Parrott at 18 or 19 that I didn't see from Kane at that age. So I think
how old was Kane when he broke into the first team?
21, about the same age as Troy is now. So it's like if Kane gets injured in pre-season training, then we'll have another decision to make. But I think Parrott will be at Spurs for most of pre-season, and then we'll decide what we want to do. But I do think the talent is there. It's just got to be produced in a game time situation, which at Preston and at Millwall and at the other loans just hasn't happened yet.
I think he's had a lot of pressure early on in his career playing for Ireland, for starters. But there we go, Jack. You got any love for this man?
I just feel like he's at one stage. I was really excited about him, but I just feel like it's either been an injury that's let him down at one stage at a loan spell. He has had a few injuries that sort of just, when he did have form, just sort of stopped the form entirely, and then he didn't really get back into the team. I don't know. I think you give him another chance with a loan spell, but there's, like I've mentioned before, there are already so many attacking talents that Spurs kind of have. We have Dane Scarlett, we have Richarlison, we have others that are coming through the academy, and as well, we can easily, like we always have done, buy well in the transfer market when it comes to attackers. We don't buy well in other positions usually consistently, but with attackers, we usually do. So I think Troy Parrott's kind of got to get it together quite quickly, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. I think he's got to take advantage of the next loan spell if he's really given one. And what happened last time I heard was that he bulked up a lot. I heard he was quite focused in his last loan spell, and I heard he started quite well, but then he got a really big injury and then just sort of, yeah.
I mean, the point that Keith makes there about Ferguson being better than him, absolutely. I don't think any of us would disagree with that. Evan Ferguson is an extremely good player.
Everybody.
Yeah, but Ferguson is an extremely good player at being just 18. So I understand that he's better than Parrott. But if I'm looking at Parrott's future, I mean, it's going to be up to him. Like we're going to give these players chances on loan, and we're going to try and give them a situation where they can thrive, like we would do with our players at Spurs. You keep the ones around and hopefully use a system that will benefit them. But I think that because Parrott's name has been around for 3 or 4 years now, people are just assuming he's much older than he is. But he's still really quite young. He's still a season and a half behind Kulusevski. I think he deserves another season. Like no one should expect him to come in and be Kane Mark II or even half of what Kane is.
That's the pressure, though, isn't it? That's always going to be the pressure on the next forward that comes through the Tottenham youth academy.
Which is another. Well, academy not so much, but it's another reason why you keep Richarlison around. You don't want it to be like Dane Scarlett. To me, has shown as much as Troy Parrott, which is very little. But people seem to think, well, he's 16 playing for Spurs in a Europa League game. He must be really good. Well, no, it didn't work like that. It's because Mourinho had pissed everyone else off. So it's there are a number of striking talents at Spurs. Lancashire, Donley. There's a number that could come through in the next 3 to 5 years and be somewhat similar to maybe what a Premier League level striker. But they're not going to do it now. Troy is just the oldest of them all, so has more chance. But I don't think any of us would we'd rather see Son play as the focal point if Richarlison and Kane were out. We wouldn't want Parrott to come in and be that guy. So he needs regular football.
The fact that he's wearing the 2021 kit does suggest that he's probably out the door sometime soon. Because Dane Scarlett and Bryan Gil are wearing last season's kit, and they couldn't even get Troy Parrott to wear the most current season's kit. So that does show maybe he's on the fringe.
But so much of what happens for this season will be decided in July and August, when Ange has the training and will decide who he wants to keep around. Ange will almost certainly know how many players he wants around. He'll know how many, if it's 2 for every position, plus maybe a couple of versatile ones, that's your 24-man squad. I mean, that could easily be what Ange is going to do. And if I don't think Parrott, it would make that squad unless there is a massive injury. So that Parrott therefore has to go on loan. But I'm certainly not writing him off because, as we saw with Harry Kane, like I think he got the Young Player of the Year at Millwall, but he didn't score a lot of goals for them. And no one at Spurs, fans who had watched him, thought he would go on and be what he did. So it's really down to the intelligence and whether Troy Parrott has football intelligence to really produce it on the field.
Okay. Let's move on to Dane Scarlett because I think we've spent enough time on Troy Parrott, and we're an hour and 40 in, and we've got lots to discuss. By the way, James Maddison coming up shortly. Let's talk briefly about Dane Scarlett. To me, it's a no-brainer. You got to loan him out, DaveO.
I'd sell Son, Richie, and Kulu and play him from up top with Kane.
No, you wouldn't.
No,
you wouldn't.
I know, of course not.
I'm just being a knob.
I'm just being an agent provocateur.
Good brand of underwear, actually.
Yeah, cheers. Scarlett, stick him on loan. That's all I've got to say about him.
HG, Scarlett.
Yeah, Scarlett. Maybe maybe because he's still so young. Maybe keep him at Spurs for 6 months so he can train and play. And if Ange is going to have the same system at lower levels, that there's no need to stick him out and have him play League One football again which is a bit more countrified.
How old is he now? 20?
Scarlett was born in 2004, I think. So that would make him 19. It might be 2005.
Why don't we do 6-month loans? Why don't you have Parrott out for the first half and bring him back for the second half and do Scarlett out and swap it around? That's just actually a serious suggestion.
Yeah,
Eating out first, Dave.
No,
but
you
yeah,
do that.
So Scarlett loan HG. It may be.
Yeah, I mean, definitely not first team. No.
Jack, Scarlett.
Yeah, to put him out on loan, find a good championship club for him. I think he probably needs a bit better competition, and the championship is improving. I think at least in terms of the way that teams compete with each other. So I think it could be good learning experience for him. Send him to a club that plays attacking football in the championship.
But do you think he's going to play in the championship?
Unless the manager feels like they know a lot about Dane Scarlett and they are guaranteeing that he gets minutes, and that's never a guarantee at all, especially in the championship where clubs are trying to get to the Premier League. Like when they're trying to get to the Premier League, that's a huge paycheck. So why would they give it to a guy that they might not have a lot of confidence in, who also might leave the following season back to Spurs? It's a good question, but hopefully he goes there.
League One, I would say, but moving forward, Bentancur might be back earlier. So he's basically saying he's taken the club's physiotherapist to Uruguay. Lots of jokes there to be made about our physiotherapist team, I'm sure. But his knee's doing very well. And he reckons in 2 or 3 months he'll be getting minutes on the pitch. So potentially could be back August, September time. DaveO, are you a cynic but your heart's not in it?
Oh, I'm a cynic and my heart's not in it, but I'm living my life to the limit. I love Bentancur. I think he's a cracking player, proper Tottenham player. Understandably, a lot of people surprisingly call me negative. I'm very positive about him. I think he's a cracking player. I just hope to God he comes back as the player he was before he got injured, because that's a really tough injury to come back from.
Yeah, I mean, I think if Bentancur comes back, it gives us an interesting start to the season, because obviously he wasn't really due back till November, December HG. So it would be a massive bonus to have him back, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, what we can't do is rush him back, and we don't need to. We shouldn't need to rush him back. As good as he is, and as much as we would probably all have him in our best Spurs team, no matter who we're playing, Bentancur would be in that team. I don't. We are not. We shouldn't be in a position where we have to say, right, Bentancur, we need you to play this game in October. We don't. So let him build the leg. Let him play a number of under 21 games to get used to the speed, to get used to football again. Yeah. But the sooner he's back fully fit, the better, because he is a brilliant, brilliant player.
Okay. And Jack agreed, I take it.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. Maybe DaveO is happy that we saved a bit of money on the Vicario deal, which pays for the physiotherapist to go over to Uruguay. So, we had somebody's paying for that physiotherapist flight. Somebody's paying for that physiotherapist time over in Uruguay. So maybe we saved a bit of coin there.
Do you reckon the physio is staying at the Bentancur family home in Montevideo? Do you reckon?
I think he's staying at a motel right nearby, but
But the Bentancurs will, offer the hospitality to the club physio.
But steaks are 25% off with the Bentancur family. Montevideo is a beautiful place to get a good steak.
No doubt.
The thing is, the physios would be working with him in London, and so when he goes to Uruguay, well, what's the physio going to do? Like, have longer summer holidays? No, he needs to be with him. But I think it's clearly good that we are allowing him to go home and spend time with his family, which of course he hasn't probably done in a number of years. And it sucks that the injury is a reason for that to happen. But still, for Spurs, for a club the size of Spurs, to send someone over for 2-3 weeks probably in Uruguay with him, it's not a big ask, and they can easily afford it.
But let's hope that he went on the ENIC private jet, which of course is loaned and paid for back to the club, just saying. But what I would love to see from a footballing point of view, which we never got to see, is Basuma and Bentancur in the same midfield.
It's where you play him under Postecoglou, isn't it? Because, I mean, 2 number 8s he plays with another DM, so it'd be interesting to see. But switching gears and moving forward and talking about transfers, which I know is what you've all come to see, although apparently there's only 90 likes, so there's 180 odd people watching. Please do smash the like button, and we'll talk.
And we did have 230 people before Sacred Cow. So
yeah, Dave called it, but yeah, there we go. It doesn't matter. We enjoyed.
I think curiosity has killed the Sacred Cow, DaveO. That's exactly what's
curiosity killed the cow.
I think going forward, what we'll do is Sacred Cow right at the end of the show, so people know if they want to. But anyway, Tottenham has started concrete contracts to be informed on Edmund Tapsoba.
Tapioca.
It's only 3 syllables, caller. Come on.
I know a little bit about this guy because he plays for Leverkusen, doesn't he? And he's decent from everything I've heard. So whilst I'm refueling, HG being the European football correspondent for the Cheese Room, let us know what you think of him. Is he a baller?
Yeah, he's a baller.
Yeah.
He's playing in the back 3 right now with Hincapie, who we were linked with last summer, and this German kind of thug called Jonathan Tah, who I really don't like at all. But they signed Tapsoba for a fair chunk of money from Portuguese football a couple of seasons ago. And he's done really well in German football, and he's ripe for a move. I don't know how many years he's got left on his contract, but I think he wants to play certainly at a richer team than Leverkusen. Obviously, Spurs aren't doing better than Leverkusen right now when it comes to the kind of competitions they're playing in. But I think he wants a big move, and if it's not going to happen within Germany, then you go to the Premier League. So it would be a very good move. I would like to see it happen. I don't know what Jack thinks. You watch the Bundesliga too.
There are 2 players that have been connected, or 3 players have been connected to Spurs that I sort of knew a lot about or were kind of really big fans of. And this could potentially actually be the one that maybe could actually come to Spurs. I was a huge fan of Bruno Guimaraes before he even came to the Premier League. I had known a lot about him at Lyon. I had already thought he was one of the best midfielders in the world, had sort of just been waiting to just be picked up by somebody. I kind of thought the same thing with Kavicha Kvaratskhelia over at Rubin Kazan when he was in Russia. I kind of was just thinking somebody's going to take this guy and he'll prove everybody right. And I've sort of said the same things about Edmund Tapsoba. I think he's one of the best ball-playing center backs, I think, in Europe. He practically is like a center mid, the way he carries the ball, the way he sort of sees passes. When Ange Postecoglou talks about not passing sideways or backwards, Edmund Tapsoba is absolutely a guy that will break the lines or sort of, play a ball into the final third unexpectedly, maybe even take it past, a striker just to embarrass him. He's a very classy guy on the ball. He's very composed, very, just, I'll be honest, just lovely to watch. I think when he's actually in possession, I think defending wise, he's very good, but he's still quite young. So I think with that then comes a lot more like kind of positional kind of intelligence, and you need to flush a lot of that out. But he's good in the air. He's very tall. He's good in the one-on-ones. He sort of has all the elements to be what you would kind of cliche call kind of a perfect center back. But at the same time, he's very, very young. The reason I sort of kind of caught wind of him was because a guy that I don't really like as a manager, Peter Bosz, was the former manager of Bayer Leverkusen at one stage. And what Peter Bosz is sort of known for is having a very expansive brand of football that especially relies on like sort of center backs to sort of like break the lines from deep, sort of be sort of the facilitators. And his Bayer Leverkusen side, I remember, I think HG would probably know this too, were known as having like one of the highest lines even the Bundesliga had ever seen. And that's definitely saying something to have one of the highest lines the Bundesliga has ever seen. And Tapsoba, despite being in a very possession dominant team and despite being in a very, kind of high line team, showed to be one of the best center backs basically in Europe in the seasons that he was under Peter Bosz. And that sort of kind of made me catch wind of him because he was really like only 19 or 20 at the time. And he was like statistically one of the best passing center backs sort of in Europe. And then I think since then he's kind of replicated it or been at least close to that type of performance and form under different managers, under different systems and different formations. I just think the guy, like, he's not perfect yet, but I think he's one of those center backs that, like, by the time he's 28, 29, will be a household name, best center back in the world type of guy. And I think it's just up to us to take advantage of this opportunity. like maybe we had with Bruno Guimaraes in the past, and like maybe we had in the case of Kavicha. I think this is a really good chance for us to buy what could be one of the next best players in the world. That's how much I rate him.
And I don't think he's going to be cheap. I think we'll end up paying the same amount of money that we paid for Romero, if not more. But I think that if you look at the type of, if Ange wants to play a certain kind of football, and you might want to say it's Man City football, or even Liverpool with the high press, trying to win the ball back as quickly as you can, those teams like to play with centre backs that really are big and strong and fast. Like Virgil van Dijk, when he played for Southampton, wasn't incredible. Certainly not the player that we've seen at Liverpool, but Liverpool have made him look good because of how the system is played. He doesn't have to do much defending. He just has to get the ball from a long punt upfield. If that's what Spurs are going to try and do, then someone like Tapsoba would be perfect, absolutely perfect for that. I'm almost surprised that he's open to coming to Spurs, because I felt like he would have had better options than us. But if we can get it done, then great, absolutely great.
Tapsoba one to keep an eye on, definitely. As is this man. So Fabrizio Romano stating Newcastle will insist on James Maddison deal this week as they don't want a long saga. He's top target, but decision has to be made soon. Tottenham are also working on the player side, still pushing it into the race. No bid submitted last week, despite reports. Yeah, James Maddison. So let's talk about him for a minute. So there he is. Bearing in mind Leicester got relegated, created the third highest chances in the league. Big chances, 7th, assists 8th, shots 4th, and goals. There you go. So since the start of the 18-19 season, I should say. He's a good player, isn't he? And he would improve us a lot, DaveO, you would think.
So that's 43 goals in how many games, roughly?
A lot.
Yeah, 150 probably, something like that.
Yeah.
So he's got about a 1 in 3 record.
He's an AM, isn't he? He's not. He's not a striker.
So what's the feeling from Leicester fans that he kind of disappeared in the last 5-6 games of the season when it was desperate for them to stay up?
I've got plenty of knowledge on this subject, but I'm trying to stay quiet because I kind of want your opinion on it before I give mine. So on
the one hand, he's obviously he brings to the team creativity, and a midfield player or an attacking midfield player can score a goal. On the other hand, and I can't remember who said it, but there is a little bit of a David Bentley vibe about him. And
hair, is his hair real?
it's just a little bit of a vibe. I don't know. I mean, as with all these things, your Grealishes and your Maddisons, we should have got him from when you was at Norwich. That's when we should have got him.
Isn't that an easy thing to say? Because there's so many players that we must be keeping.
Yeah, that would have been a Levy signing.
Yeah, absolutely, and that would have been a Levy signing. It wouldn't have even.
That's the same thing with Kavicha. That's the thing. Just quickly back on the Kavicha thing. It's why I don't accept anybody on the Kavicha train, because everybody, when we were initially connected to the guy, it was like we were linked for him for around 10 million euros, I think it was, or like something like that. It wasn't even like 12. It was like it was less than what Longley might cost or something. And then everybody was like, "What a Levy signing! What a Levy signing!" And then the same people 9 months later are saying, "How on earth did we not get Kavicha?" So it's
I'm pretty sure if we'd have signed Grealish for 25 million, that would have been a Levy signing, because Villa were going down at that point. And
the thing is, had we signed Grealish, then we wouldn't have signed Maddison at that point.
No, I know. But what I'm saying is, when you look at your Grealishes, your Maddisons, and your Bowens, who are coming from the from the Championship, that should be really is our prime market. And the last time we did that well really was Delhi. Let's be honest. We could have got Bowen.
Wouldn't that market all come between 20 and 30 million pounds,
Correct, and
maybe less. Maybe less.
Exactly right, actually, and that's how we could have operated better in that price bracket than we do. Look, I think Maddison, if we can get him in, I think he would be a good signing, because he would be an additive, if that's the right word, to what we have. We don't have that skill set in terms of playing between the lines. My questions are, one, on attitude, and secondly, will he fit in with Ange Ball?
I think he will. He presses a lot.
The thing is, Spurs have a lot of central midfielders. If you include the ones that are coming back from loan, which Ange may well decide later on that he wants around, there's a lot of 8s in that team. Right? I mean, you could even say that Højbjerg is more of an 8 than a 6. Now, I don't think Højbjerg suits Ange ball at all, and I think Højbjerg will probably go. But what do you do with Lo Celso? What do you do with Ndombele? What do you do with if we're going to move Kulusevski to an 8? Like, where's the spot for Maddison? Maddison is clearly a good player. There's no doubt about that. But to me, I don't expect Maddison to come to Spurs because I do think he will end up having a better option than us. And if he's really willing to make that move in the next 3-4 weeks before the season really gets going, before preseason really ramps up, then great. But if I'm Maddison, knowing full well that my price tag will probably drop, I might want to see what happens in mid to late August before I make the last big contract of my career. Is he really that desperate to play in London that Spurs would be an option? It's a weird one. So I understand why he might want us, but I don't know why he would make that decision so soon when he really doesn't need to. We've seen already just this week, as soon as Gundogan decides to leave Man City, they're on Kovacic, they're on Declan Rice apparently. And if someone like Bernardo Silva went, then Maddison could easily go to Man City and play pretty often. So I just, yes, it's one of those signings that Spurs should definitely be looking at, but there are so many other players that we already have that might be able to do something that we say, that money that we're going to spend on Maddison needs to go on maybe 2 centre-halves and not just Tapsoba.
Yeah. Chat. Maddison for you?
I feel like you could make an argument that we could look for better and we could look for cheaper. But if Ange Postecoglou sees this number 10 position, or if he sees this creative midfield position as one of his most important roles, you probably do want one of the best that's on the market. Yeah. And I do feel like James Maddison is probably one of the best on the market. We just said earlier, I think Edmund Tapsoba is a guy that you don't price negotiate about. It is one of the cliches. You pay the money, and I never say that. So I think I'm allowed to use that cliche for pay the money because it feels like you need to do that with certain players. I think it's the case with James Maddison. If you feel like you really want him, don't mess about with it. Just sort of get the deal done and pay what they're asking for. If we don't feel like he is the perfect choice for that creative midfield position, or maybe Postecoglou feels like he's not married to James Maddison in that sort of role, I think he could go for an Alex Scott. He could go for an Eberiche Eze. He could go for Pedro Gonçalves. He could go for, I think you probably actually want to go for homegrown players because there are a lot of homegrown spots that need filling. But I don't know. I think if you're not married to James Maddison, you might as well go for something maybe a bit cheaper. But if you feel like he's the perfect candidate, pay the money.
I mean, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, like, if you do believe in Romano and the stuff that he pumps out on Twitter, he doesn't just say that Spurs want Maddison. He says that Ange is okay with Spurs wanting Maddison. Like, Ange is fully behind this, which he doesn't have to put, but he does tend to put it. So I can see Ange wanting Maddison. I think that if you are looking for a 10 who has the ability to play as an 8, Maddison is definitely one of them. We saw that Eriksen could do it when he moved back when we got to the Champions League final. Eriksen played more of an 8 then. He certainly wasn't the player that he had been when we were really good. So, yeah, I have nothing wrong with it. I could see Lo Celso happily going to Villa. I could see Villa paying quite a lot of money for Lo Celso, but they went and signed, they got another guy who could play that role. So maybe they won't. And I do think that, as I said before, Ange will make those calls in the next month, 6 weeks, and I think this one will, despite what Newcastle want, I think this one will run for a bit.
I think like the reality of it is, you probably all know I've got contacts in the James Maddison camp, so I can tell you.
Do you? I never knew.
I can tell you relatively from the horse's mouth what the situation is. That Spurs have, despite what Fabrizio Romano says, made an offer for him, and it was nowhere near what Leicester wanted. And I can tell you that Newcastle have made an offer for him, which was considerably more than Spurs. and it was nowhere near what Leicester wanted. What Leicester want is 55 million quid for Maddison, and quite rightly, because he's probably their most saleable asset, right? Going into Championship, Maddison doesn't want to be at Leicester, so I think it's almost certain that there will be a
If
deal.
you sell a player for 55 million as well, that's getting you straight back, hopefully, into the Premier League.
Exactly right. And you've got to bear in mind they've already lost Tielemans on a free, so they're going to want to sell Maddison because he's got a year left on his deal, but they're going to want top dollar for him. And I think
everyone
willing to pay for that top dollar. But Maddison is open to Spurs or Newcastle. The family want to get as close to Leicester as possible, which means that Spurs is a more likely destination than Newcastle on that score. But if Spurs don't stump up the cash, that's it, basically. But he would sign for Spurs. The reality of it is it's all about how much we're going to pay. And the trouble is I don't see us willing to pay what gets it done, 48 million plus add-ons, probably. I think that's a fair price for Maddison, if I'm honest. But whether we've got the financial capability to do that is another question. When we've got players on the books, as HG says, that already fulfill that role, are on 100, 200 grand a week.
I think that if we're going to sell Højbjerg and Lo Celso and we use that money on Maddison, I think we'd all take that deal tomorrow, right? And it's not to say Lo Celso is a terrible player or Højbjerg is a terrible player, but they are more likely to be jettisoned, I think. They're both. I mean, I think Højbjerg turns 28 in a few weeks. Lo Celso's 27. Like, that's not old, but again, if we're trying to build the team and they're not massively part of it, you're going to want to shift those. So I think that we would all make that, and if Maddison is interested, then great. But if I was Maddison's agent, I would be saying, hold your horses. Just hold your horses. There is no rush for you whatsoever, because other opportunities might come up with teams who could lay that 50 million down without even blinking.
And I could also tell you reliably that either way, Spurs aren't Maddison's dream location.
Yeah.
Because, and let's face it, if we were in his position, would Spurs be our dream location, taken away from the fact that we're Spurs fans? No. Because you've got to be realistic about it. You want City, you want Arsenal right now.
He's an Arsenal fan as well.
He's not an Arsenal fan. You want United. He's not. He's a Coventry City
He hates
fan.
Harry Kane.
But, no, he did when he was
Bale. It was 15. Bale with those tweets. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's bollocks. He doesn't hate Harry Kane. They're good mates. Actually, they play golf together. But there's
everyone plays golf with Harry Kane.
There's lots of things. there's lots of things about this transfer that are complex. And I think it will. I think HG is absolutely on the money. I think it will run and run. And I think Maddison wants this next move to be his big move. And I think he's going to take his time and see who comes in for him. But we were never top of the queue. And I think it's not just about money, but it is partly about money.
I'd be interested to see what would happen, because Newcastle have gone out and signed Tonali, and they've got Guimaraes. Maybe they want Maddison as well. Maybe they don't. Who knows?
They've agreed personal terms.
Yeah, I'd imagine that's quite easy to do. It's just a question of what Maddison wants to do in the end. If his family are that wedged to Leicester, I mean it doesn't necessarily limit you, but it just means it's going to I'm not sure I'd want to have a player that lived 2 or 3 hours away from the training ground. Do you know what I mean? Or even if he moved down, that he had the other half of the family were desperate to go up to Leicester all the time. That's not something I would really want to take on, as minor as that might seem. So I just don't know. I could honestly see that Maddison ends up doing half a season at Leicester and then goes in January to someone. Because I don't know if there are clubs out there who will say, yes, Maddison is the guy for us. We've seen that with Declan Rice this summer, that there are clubs that will go out for him. Even the kid at Southampton, Lavia, you've seen that clubs will go out for them. Maddison seems to be in that spot where, we wouldn't mind it, but he's not
But
Maddison,
the price has got to be right.
Yeah, I guess. I don't think Newcastle really care about the price. They just don't want to get fleeced. When you've got lots of money, you don't want to get fleeced. And Spurs, well, we don't have that much money, but we still don't want to get fleeced. It's an interesting one. When Man City went out and paid the release clause for Grealish, and it just happened.
Yeah.
That isn't going to happen for Maddison. Although I would argue that Maddison had probably done more in the Premier League than Grealish had. So I really don't know where this will go. But I think that for Spurs, we definitely want a player like Maddison. But Maddison will keep his options open as long as he can.
100%. And just on this, Kerry, channel member, you're welcome to get your channel memberships in the YouTube homepage. I'd rather a player that wants to come to us than go. But that's most players. Like, no one's going. If a lot of players don't go, oh, that's my dream club. They just end up there because that's the best offer on the table. That's that's reality.
People join Spurs probably because we pay good money, and we do pay decent money for players. Yeah. I don't think Dombele picked us because of that we just got to a Champions League final.
No. The Celso picked us because he's always want to play for Spurs.
No, of course not.
Probably.
I
reckon he came because of Pops was there.
Yeah.
Players love it. Really wanting to come to us is kind of a myth, really. Players go for it's a job, isn't it? And ultimately, in your job, if some school sets up down the road HG and they offer you a double your salary to come and teach there, you're going to take it.
My kids might be watching. I love my kids. It scares the crap out of me when I see them in the hallways. They're like, "Oh, I saw you on YouTube last night." Oh, did you? Okay.
But it's the reality. It's the reality,
Yeah,
and that's that's what happens in life. So
if a rival supermarket chain came in for you, caller,
then obviously I would ask what the remuneration is straight away. There we go. Plus add-ons. What do we think about this guy? I think, to be honest, John's trolling me and wants me to try and pronounce that name, but I'm just gonna skirt around it and say Tosin.
I think it's Adarabioyo.
Adarabioyo. There you go.
Adarabioyo. Yeah.
Doesn't he have Tosin on the back of his shirt? Just call him Tosin.
There you go, Tosin. Anyone? I don't know much about him. To be honest.
I know a Fulham fan, or I don't know him personally, but there is a prominent, YouTuber that's a Fulham fan, and he has said he's not bad, but he said he's really not like Spurs level when he was asked about this sort of rumor, which concerns me. He is homegrown, he is young, he is from the Man City Academy, all good things, but they kind of brought in, I think his name was Diop or something like Diop, recently this season, to replace or to compete with Tosin Adarabioyo. Tim Ream kept his spot. He wasn't really ever challenged in that first team. It was actually between Adarabioyo and that Diop guy, and it felt like Adarabioyo kind of maybe didn't win out. Maybe that's also because he's had his eyes elsewhere on a move to a different club, but I think he started I think he started a fair amount of games, but he also, I think, was left on the bench for more than 8 or 9 games as well. So it does show that maybe he's not well favored at Fulham, and even a Fulham fan said he's not really top 4 level. So that does concern me.
I think if Tosin was to come in, he becomes the 4th CB of 4. That's it. He's a
homegrown replacement. Almost.
Yeah, probably. He's a homegrown person who wouldn't mind being a squad member at a huge side for a couple of seasons. We all want Dyer gone. We all want Sanchez gone.
Davis as well.
No, I would keep Davis around, but
but some people want him gone though.
Yeah, okay, that's true. I just, if Romero is the only centre back that we want to keep around, and we're going to sign Tapsoba, and and Longley and then Tosin become the backups, they are short-term options. There's no doubt about it. But if Spurs want to go that way with, you can either do what Man City do and go out and spend a lot of money on a homegrown player. We're not going to be able to do that. Those players probably won't join Spurs. So the next best option for Spurs, if you want to have those 8 players, is either they come through the academy, which I don't think we have anyone certainly who's ready to be a squad player at Spurs, or you're going to do this route and you're going to say, you know what, you are going to be our Kevin Wimmer, you are going to be our 4th choice centre back, you might play a game every 2 or 3 months or whenever injuries happen. Yeah. And Tosin, because he's got Premier League experience, is not a terrible option. It's no different than what Leicester did when they signed Johnny Evans. But the problem for Leicester is that Johnny Evans ended up being their starter for 5 seasons. Yeah. and Spurs don't want that from Tosin, and I'm sure that he'd be aware of that.
Okay. I just want to go to one viewer question in particular, which is this one by Paul Hogan, who the only reason I'm highlighting, I want to know, are you Crocodile Dundee? So is Ange Postecoglou a good appointment for Spurs? Yes, he is, Paul. And please don't pull your knife out on me, is all I've got to say about that.
Is your knife not bigger?
That's a knife. That's a knife, mate. That's a knife. But look, we'll be going 2 hours, 14 minutes, boring people to tears, slaughtering cows, discussing transfer rumours, and running snog, marry, or avoid over the Tottenham forward line. So I want to say, DaveO, a big thank you for your contribution today. The sun has risen like the phoenix over Sydney. It's been a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you very much. And I just want to shout out to Tom, who is turning 14 on Monday.
Happy birthday, Tom.
Happy birthday, Tom.
HG, it's very late in Vienna.
It is,
you're getting death threats, so I'm sure you're shit scared. So, you know,
he's going to come and beat me up. He's going to come and beat me up.
Don't forget the mirror under the car, HG, as well.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Watch out for that.
Thanks for joining, mate. Thanks for joining.
No worries. No worries at all.
Your wealth of wisdom is always appreciated. And speaking of wealth of wisdoms, Jack, it's always a pleasure to have you and your prop on the show.
DaveO wasn't given the pleasure of the Shabbat siren. It still will probably be a few more hours, I think, until that gets rung. Because it's summertime and I guess it's wintertime over in Melbourne. So, we switched places. So the Shabbat siren's a little earlier your time, and it's a little later my time.
Very early.
I stand corrected, Garth.
That's my sign off. Thank you.
I think the full quote is something like, "That's not a knife. That's a knife."
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or that's a knife. Yeah. So look, on that bombshell, join us again. We're going to be back Monday, Wednesday, Friday, bringing you all the Tottenham news and views. We appreciate you watching. Please do subscribe, like, and share this video and all the other great Cheese Room content that's available. Think about joining our Patreon. Go to patreon.com/The Cheese Room Podcast for more details. £3 a month and you get a mug. Brilliant. And of course, until next time, come on, you Spurs!
Big Ange, we trust.
Come on, you Spurs.
Come on, you Spurs!